Yeah.
You never know.
You never know. I get a decent view of. Well, I'm now facing the. I'm not facing the sun, so the next few weeks, as the sun continues to set sooner and sooner, are going to be fun. But I get a decent city view.
Yeah. Very
So
good.
I get to look at. Hey, I get to look at the city. American Airlines Center is there-ish.
Nice.
Wait, where is it?
YouTube,
Yeah,
what's up, by the
there-ish.
way? How are you guys doing?
Yeah, how are you guys doing?
I mean, probably pretty good because we had college football and that was an amazing
Right.
week.
Did
Can't
you
be-
stay up last night?
I did not actually last night, but I watched the game in its let me try speaking again. I watched the game in its entirety today. So yeah, well, I can't wait to talk about that.
I think I laughed at the absurdity this weekend more than I have ever. Just like in one week. Now it helps that there were like a significant number of games on Thursday and Friday.
Yeah.
So there was a good opportunity for there to be absurd moments, but LSU and Florida State, I just want to thank you. Like, thank you from the bottom of my heart for what that game was last night. It was completely unnecessary, but I appreciate it.
Yep.
So, oh my gosh, that was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. But gosh, oh man, I mean, other than the 3:30 window, there were good games. There was a crazy game the whole time, and 3:30,
Well, even
like,
even,
it wasn't.
Georgia,
They were
even
like,
Arkansas Cincinnati wasn't that bad.
that's what I was gonna say. Like
Yeah.
that game wasn't like crazy or absurd, but it was a good enough game to be paying
Yeah.
attention to. Like, freaking Oregon is.
I gotta
Yeah,
reset
we'll
everything.
talk about it later. Like,
Yeah.
we'll talk about that later. That was gross.
Yeah.
Absolutely gross.
I have the clock ready to go. Like, whatever. Pull out.
Oh, it's not a conspiracy. My eyes said.
Hey,
it.
how with that attitude edition.
I don't think it's a conspiracy when it's like, oh my goodness, that's one of the worst things I've ever seen. So,
Yeah.
it was disgusting. But, oh well, it is what it is.
Yep. All right. Well, I think I'm ready to record if you guys are.
Yeah.
Go right into it.
Yeah, I'm good to go.
Decent amount of- Did everything in the show notes make sense? Did the Eliminator Challenge, are you guys tracking with all that?
I have one
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Why is Iowa South Dakota State not its own segment?
Well, we can talk about it. I mean, really, that first segment's just whatever. I just threw some stuff in from the last week.
Yeah,
Bring
I
it
know.
up,
It's
yes.
just kind of.
Oh, my.
That was my favorite thing of
That's the best
entire
basketball game
day.
I've ever seen.
That's the best
That was
baseball
baseball.
game
Or
I've
baseball,
ever
that's
seen.
what I
Yeah.
meant. That's what I meant.
Best baseball
I meant
game.
baseball.
Basketball was
No, but
North
that-
Carolina App State. That was
Yeah, that was a great basketball
That was a
game. Love that.
Yeah.
So good. I absolutely love it. It was such a good time. Thank you again. College football is back. Nothing like it.
Yeah.
All right. I am recording.
Oh, I should probably record. I
We
am
are good.
recording.
I am recording. All right, I'll get it started. Welcome to the Fifth and Goal podcast. My name is Aaron. I'm joined once again by my good friends Josh and Jonny. We are back for another episode. You already know it's going to be an action-packed episode with all of the insane college football action we had in week one. But before we get to that, Josh, what's up, man? How was your week?
I'm doing great. My week has been a big week. Grad school has started again for me, which means this week I got 1,000 pages of signs to read in a week. So we've been having a great time figuring out,
Wow.
remembering what books are, and how to read efficiently. But only people on the stream can see. I did finally move into my new apartment, new
Yeah.
apartment with Wi-Fi, so I don't have to borrow a. There were so many weird words in that. I'm going to reset. And I also finally, I finally moved into my new apartment. This would only be seen by the streamers,
Mm-hmm.
people watching us live on YouTube.
Yep.
But I'm in an apartment with its own Wi-Fi, with its own when I say its own doors, I don't have to worry about people slamming doors all around me anymore and having Aaron to like do all this weird editing stuff. My noise gate can only do so much when people are just actively like just throwing doors
Yeah.
around me. So unless my roommate picks up a really weird door slamming habit, then editing Aaron's gonna have a lot easier time on my audio.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, yeah, you couldn't do anything about it. I know when that air conditioning unit kicked on.
Oh my
Oof,
gosh.
yeah, but that's okay. It's all
You
good.
knew.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good. Glad your week's going well. Johnny, what's up, man?
Not a whole, soccer's coming towards the end. We're hitting
Yeah.
the home stretch on the MLS season. It's earlier than normal because of the World Cup coming up. So we got to finish up by, the end of October. Got to a crew game on Wednesday. They got
Nice.
all 3 points. Loved that against Miami. They botched it on Saturday, but we won't
Yes.
talk about that. And then my grandpa, September 1st, turned 95.
Wow.
So happy birthday, Grandpa.
Wow.
Love you.
Amazing. That's awesome. Well, that's great. My week was good as well. Since we're giving happy birthdays, happy birthday, Alex. My youngest brother had a birthday this week, so happy birthday to him. Got to hang out with him over the weekend, so that was good. And then when I wasn't hanging out with him, I was pretty much watching college football because from Thursday on, and even tonight, a Monday, as we're recording, we've got Clemson, Georgia Tech kicking off in about an hour and a half. Just tremendous college football. Yes, there were some games highlighted on the calendar going into this week that you thought would be good. We also had games that kind of came out of nowhere that just surprised you for a variety of different reasons. We're here to break all that down now. Guys, I don't even know where to start. I guess let's start with maybe our college football playoff predictions because here's the deal, right? You guys all have the hindsight of seeing what we picked last week, and now you can make fun of us. And yes, we're getting people on Facebook. You know the laughing emoji on Facebook? Yes, people picked up our graphics of our playoff picks, and they're like, haha, so funny. I'm like, well, you know what? You had to pick somebody. And we made the mistake of each of us, all 3 of us, had a Pac-12 team.
Trusting.
Yes. Johnny and I had Utah. Josh had Oregon. Let's start with Utah, Florida.
They're not dead yet.
They're not, and Oregon's not, even though I think they
Yes,
are.
they are.
They had a quality loss against the top 10 team. It's fine.
Dead on the streets of Atlanta. I don't even think they made it back to the West Coast.
They
Ironically,
forgot
I think they
forgot
didn't
to check
actually.
their football skills in their carry-ons.
Oh, no, that was Utah. Ironically, Utah did not actually make it back. They had like a bunch of flight problems. So
Yeah, those
apparently they
poor
got stuck in
guys.
Gainesville. Anyways, let's talk about Utah, Florida, because this was an interesting game coming in. Yes, Utah's ranked number 7 against an unranked Florida, but you kind of threw out the ratings when you heard that this game was in Gainesville. It was hot. It was muggy. The swamp lived up to its name. It was jam-packed. The stadium was loud. It was a great environment, and Florida, with the best player on the field, Anthony Richardson, created magic and got Florida to a victory. Even though Utah, at the end of the game, they're only down 3. They're marching down the field. They've got it in the red zone. And then Cam Rising makes a critical mistake and throws an interception. Johnny, I mean, it hurt us because we had Utah in our playoff. Like, I was kind of pulling for Utah because of that, but so close.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm pretty much always cheering against the SEC. So,
Yeah.
all of you who actually know me, who listen to this podcast, already know that. So I'm just stating the obvious. I really love that Utah team too.
Mhm.
That was a brutal first game of the season. And so one thing that I will continually say as we go throughout the season, one, college football is more than just the playoff race.
Yes.
So,
Well said.
we're going to talk a lot about like the playoff race here. I will try, and I know Aaron and Josh will also try, that we make sure that we focus on the just fantastic aspects of college football as well. And we're going to talk about some of those games next. App State, North Carolina, LSU, Florida State, that are not going to have anything to do with the playoff. And that's like why, honestly, those games are why we love college football. The madness, the craziness, the dumb plays, the phenomenal plays out of nowhere, the plays that we didn't even know were, that we have to check a rule book to figure out if that's even allowed.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we love college football. But more your question. One, Utah's not done. It's a week 1 game on the road in the swamp. If you watched Anthony Richardson in that game and you look at the stat sheet and the numbers, his numbers don't say anything insane or fantastic. There's more to football than that. There's more to any sport than that. the leadership and confidence he played with was outstanding. Something we never saw last year out of him. I don't know how good Florida can be this year. If Florida has a quality year, Utah is anything but done. Now, they have no room for error. They're not an SEC team where they can lose 2, win the conference, and still potentially make the playoff. That's not possible. Their room for error is gone. But a forgivable loss, if there ever was one, 3 points in Gainesville at night, week 1 has to mean something.
Yeah.
While Alabama's playing Utah State and, Michigan's playing Colorado State, and we have guys playing New Mexico State, and all of these cupcakes and garbage games, doesn't Utah and Florida as well, deserve some credit? Thank you for scheduling a home and home matchup. Florida goes to Salt Lake City next year, not neutral site. Love that. You played a real opponent week 1. That takes guts. That's risky. That can be extraordinarily helpful to you and your team and your season, or it can damage you right off the bat. I mean, Utah played a great game too. It did not appear in that game, and I'm going to go back and watch the whole game again because I'm watching the Buckeyes at the same time. Utah did not appear, of course, like they didn't belong. Utah played right there with them, could have won the game at the very end just as well also. So Cam Rising's still right there. Utah's still right there. I think give Florida credit. This team's going to be at play in the East. They're alongside Tennessee and Kentucky, a team to watch where one of those teams beat Georgia? Is it possible? Could one of them knock them off? I think those 3 teams are the only ones with puncher's chances in the division. But I wouldn't have even had Florida in that group before this.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Richardson, with their schedule, I have him after 1 week in the top 5 of the Heisman race.
Yeah.
It was one of the best games of the night. He played fantastic and was a key cog in winning that. The Heisman, it's after 1 week. You don't win it after a week. He has to be up there. He played fantastic, and he gets a lot of great opportunities this season. I'm excited to keep watching him play. That fake jump pass was, wow.
Yeah.
I threw me off too.
Yeah, it was a great game. You're right, Utah's not done. They do need to run the table the rest of the way. They play some key games here in a few weeks. They've got at UCLA and home against USC back-to-back weeks, and I think even Oregon State before that. So it's going to be sooner rather than later when we figure out, hey, is this Utah team legit in terms of a playoff team? Again, you're right, Johnny, there's much more to it, but because so much of the discussion is pointed towards the playoff, that's a tough hit from the Pac-12 week 1. And this is the same conversation we had last year almost, where the Pac-12 was almost out of it within the first week or two. Last season, Oregon seemed to save that temporarily when they beat Ohio State in Columbus, and then 2 weeks later, they lose to Stanford, and that went out the window. We're in a dangerous situation where, at least for the Pac-12, that's a very real possibility, and all of a sudden, and again, this is a bit of an overreaction, but there's some truth to it as well, USC seems like you might be the only playoff shot the Pac-12 has. But that's a week 1 overreaction, so I won't get too far ahead of myself here. But let's just...
Speaking of getting too far ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, let's rip the Band-Aid off. You did have Oregon. I respect the gusto of the pick, but my goodness, Georgia committed war crimes against the Ducks.
The Ducks forgot to... sometimes you just have to wonder if they... Here's how we can sum it up. First off, 49-3. I shouldn't have to summarize it anymore. Afterwards, in a post-game interview, Kirby Smart said, determining the best 5 players is an ongoing evaluation. And quote, we didn't have a situation where there was a lot of adversity or required a lot of composure. So we'll figure out who those best guys are so we can go along. It's bad when you're playing a Power 5 school and one of the better, within the Pac-12. And later on, you're going, you know what, guys? I'm sorry, we didn't learn anything from that game. Stetson Bennett had a career high 368 yards.
Wow.
Over 40 minutes because they benched him early because which is embarrassing. I think the Ducks only had one tackle for loss on a pass play, which is just, again, not great. The Pac-12 wasn't, they're not known for just, super gritty defenses, but come on, can we do at least just a little thing? And
Yeah.
so, for all of you, all five of you else out there who picked Oregon along with me to maybe rise above the potentials of a much better Utah, like, here we go.
Yeah.
Oof.
I mean, again, this is the best example of let's overreact. Let's draw conclusions from week one. And your conclusions based on this week is, oh my gosh, no one's touching Georgia. And the other conclusion is, oh, well, Oregon's going 6-6. That's a tough year.
Oregon is terrible, Aaron. No. Like Georgia, yes, Georgia's better than we thought. My takeaway was actually less of Georgia and more on Oregon. They weren't ready.
Yeah.
I mean, they were arguing with each other as they're trying to find their matchups.
Yeah.
Oregon is bad. They are bad.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, it just looked like I thought going in that maybe there's a chance Oregon makes it interesting just because Dan Lanning's coming from Georgia. Instead, it was quite the opposite, where Dan Lanning, his staff was not prepared. I thought maybe they'd have an edge over Kirby Smart. It was the exact opposite. Kirby Smart knew exactly what buttons to press. By the way, the best button he can press all year, and I'm going to say this now, and I think I said this before the season started. By the end of this season, and this is not a week one overreaction, this is just, I think, true. We're going to say at the end of the season that this group of tight ends for Georgia is the best group of tight ends ever assembled on one college football team. I think probably the runner-up is you probably have to go all the way back to 2001 Miami, where they would have had both Jeremy Shockey and Kellen Winslow. Maybe there's some other teams in there. I know Iowa's had great tight ends through the last few years, but I truly think that. I mean, you've got Brock Bowers, who's a sophomore still, and you've got a third-string tight end who's 6'7", like 260, running past people, jumping over them, and then running someone over, all in the same pass catch. I mean, it's ridiculous.
That's LeBron James out there, really, for an equivalent.
Yes.
That's LeBron catching the ball and just running all over you.
I think there's a chance, and again, you're right, Josh, it's a good point you bring up, Georgia being very coy, saying all the right things, even getting into recruiting. I've never heard such a recruiting pitch after a big game, I don't think, in my life, where Kirby Smart's like, wide receivers should love coming here. Look what we did. We just threw for 350 yards. Basically, he straight up said that, and good for him, because that's part of the deal. You recruit at all times. Yeah. You hear that not Steve Spurrier. You hear that Dan Mullen. Anyways. Yeah, so rough day for the Oregon Ducks. But that was a couple of good games. But let's talk about the game that probably made us the happiest, and that was Ohio State defeating Notre Dame. The final score was maybe what you thought would be the halftime score. It was 21-10. That was your final score, and it was really a close game, and Notre Dame leading into the second half before Ohio State took things over. I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are. Not exactly how I thought the game was going to go, but I think if you ask Ohio State fans, which is all three of us, the defense was just so... Now, I don't think Notre Dame's a particularly good offense, but there were offenses last season that weren't particularly good that looked really good when they played Ohio State. So, as a Buckeye fan, I was very, very impressed by the defense in week one under Jim Knowles. The transformation seems to be immediate for this team.
Yeah, you know what? If you would have asked me, if Notre Dame scored 10 points before the game started, I would have been like, wow, we definitely covered. In a sense, again, coming from a Buckeye fan, but also I'd say as somebody who's looking at potential competitors to that Alabama-Georgia just stranglehold over the top, it appears. It was interesting to see Ohio State win in a different manner than last year. When Ohio State got into those tough games against Oregon and Michigan, where they got punched in the mouth and they got that first measure of attack, that first punch taken away, they didn't have a second one to go to. Michigan took the lead early. Oregon took the lead early. You're playing catch up. Ryan Day can be quick to abandon the run game in those situations. And we don't have a defense to make plays and get stops to allow our offense to catch up even in the Rose Bowl, the defense hung on for dear life and made just enough stops. They still didn't play very well, even in the second half. The offense won in track meets, even against Purdue, even against Michigan State. You saw that was the way to win, was our offense has to score 6 touchdowns to win the game. Like 5, 6 touchdowns. It felt necessary. When Ohio State went up 21-10, I'm like, we're good.
Yeah.
We're good. I wasn't worried about that, which was, I haven't felt that way in a couple years. So it was interesting to see. The game's not going how we want. They're playing 2 safeties deep, keeping everything in front of them, trying to make Stroud throw into real tight windows and not giving the receivers a lot of space. And Jigba getting hurt was really tough also to the passing game. They ran it down their throats. The offensive line imposed their will, and the defense shut them out in the second half. And that wasn't just by luck. It wasn't even turnovers. It just nobody's open for Buckner back there, and he's getting harassed in the backfield. So I thought in that aspect, a very big positive. And I have faith that the offense is going to come back quick. I don't have a whole lot of concerns about that, especially week 1. They have a couple weeks really to get right in that area. I overall pleased as an Ohio State fan. And they were tested. Again, we just mentioned Utah going to Florida. It was a blowout, but Georgia and Oregon playing each other, credit to them. Yep. Ohio State and Notre Dame, credit to them. They played a real team week 1. That is tough to do. So overall, happy with the result.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you both have mentioned and that we need to keep in mind here is that there is no preseason for college football. Mm-hmm. This was there. I mean, imagine in the NFL with everything riding on it, the Bengals just scheduling the Rams week 1. Just what, screw it, we're going for it. Or Tampa Bay, and just what, let's hit it. And expecting the whole season to ride, and expecting the season to ride on that loss or victory. And we don't get that luxury in college football. So normally that's why you're scheduling some cupcakes, just to kind of test the waters and see. I mean, and listen, I'm not going to speak anything crazy. I'm not saying that Arkansas State is going to be, on par with Notre Dame, hopefully. But generally, you're scheduling a weaker team or two to get your guys kind of used to the rhythm. I mean, these guys are 19 to 20 years old. They are, they got some NIL deals, but they're still largely non-professionals. 106,000 people for a primetime game. Ohio State doesn't do night games. That's just not part of the tradition. They're increasing, but this is not an experience. A lot of them have a whole night game. And so and you were number 1 in offensive efficiency last year. And so there's a lot of lofty expectations for you guys for those guys to hold up to. And so, yeah, it's natural that they're going to drop some. And it was going to be, we probably all overestimated how easily the transition was going to happen. Mm-hmm. Now, would we have all preferred to see a little bit more against, a Notre Dame that is on a first-year head coach with a lot of changeover on staffing and players? Yeah, of course. However, for a preseason game, essentially, before conference play starts, this was about as good as we could hope. They fought an ugly game. They fought it early. They had it early in their schedule. This was not a pretty game, but I think we would all rather take something like this early as you're still figuring things out. I think it would have even been okay with a tight loss and be you know what, this hurts, but this is exactly as you're testing the waters, as you're figuring out offensive strategies, as you're getting the defense settled into its new routines, into a new defensive staff, this is exactly anything you could have wanted. And so in effort to not predict the rest of the season, I think this is pretty much exactly what we would have expected. Great defense right off the bat, and an offense that's going to figure things out increasingly. This is not going to be, we are not going to look at, ideally, we're not going to look at Ohio State playing Michigan in November and see the same team on the field.
Yes.
And that's just natural.
Yeah.
Oh man, this November team, played against Notre Dame. Well, yeah, but they aren't. Yeah. And this team still got it done.
And there's a chance at the end of the season you look back and you're like, oh, if the offense was clicking like this week 1, they beat Notre Dame by 24.
Right.
Like, that's a very real possibility. And
Mhm.
also, like, give credit to Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman's one of the best defensive minds in
Yeah,
college
truly.
football. They have a lot of really talented players on that offense and defense. So they actually are one of the few teams that they line up against Ohio State, and they're not completely outmatched. Ohio State still has far more talent, especially since it's Marcus Freeman's first year, but they have real players over there at Notre Dame. So they played very
truly.
well. They had a great game plan. I thought Herb Street had a really good line just talking about, like, honestly, the scheme was very similar to what we saw give Patrick Mahomes a lot of struggles in the NFL this year. That two-back safety, everything is in front of you. How patient will the quarterback be? Will he be willing to throw 5-yard passes? Notre Dame let the Buckeyes receivers catch the ball for 5 yards and just kept them in front of them the whole time. But as a fan, if you ask me honestly, this is hindsight, of course, but would I rather take the 21-10 win or win 49-35? I'll take this one.
Yep.
I will
Oh, yeah.
absolutely take this one. And yeah, it sounds like you guys are the same, because I have faith that the offense is going to figure itself out. To see the defense play that angry with Eichenberg and Chambers, and Hall was in the backfield and was a monster at defensive tackle the whole game, was fantastic to see. Breath of fresh air. I was just thrilled by it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, everything you guys said. There's a chance, and I think there's a good chance, that the offense played their worst game of the season. There's a very real possibility. Now,
yeah.
again, against one of the arguably maybe the best defense they face this season. I know Michigan will have something to say about that. I know Penn State, even Wisconsin will have something to say, and Iowa certainly. But there's I mean, Notre Dame is right up there in the discussion. Yeah, we'll talk about Iowa.
Can we talk about Iowa?
Yeah, we'll
next?
just talk about that, guys. My favorite stat from this week is that North Carolina and App State, which is another game we'll talk about briefly. Final score: 63-61. App State scoring 40 plus points in the fourth quarter.
62 points were scored in that fourth quarter.
Yes,
I love it.
Yes. The same sport, yes, college football, has Iowa playing the South Dakota State Jackrabbits to a 7-3 final score. And, well, there's a normal way of getting it. Yeah, just an old-fashioned Josh, just ground and pound, like just punch it in the end zone for a touchdown, right? No, instead, Iowa, who refuses to be normal, kicks a field goal and then gets two safeties to cling to a 7-3 victory over FCS South Dakota State. No disrespect to them, because they're a good FCS program and have been for quite some time. But guys, there's nepotism, and then there's Kirk Ferentz just continuing to not get rid of his son at offensive coordinator.
He got a raise this offseason.
Oh my gosh. Whoa. Okay. Well.
Spencer Petras, did you see his QBR?
Yes.
QBR is a stat based on the opponent you're facing.
Yes.
Your completion percentage, yards. It's out of 100. Spencer Petras got a 1.1 QBR. He was 11-25, 109 yards, and a pick. I mean, that is just gross.
Yeah.
I mean, it is awful. Just
and this is
awful.
Not, and it's not new.
No, it's not.
No. And I mean, the MVP of the game, the MVP. So I do want to give credit, because we're going to just throttle Iowa here. Corey Taylor, well done, man. Round of applause. The punter for Iowa. And I will say, the special teams unit as a whole, fantastic job, guys. Downing those balls inside the 5.
Jeez.
I mean, that's what got them the safeties both times. Just hats off to you. You guys won the entire game. It's 3-3 at half. You got 2 safeties in the second half. I mean, if he didn't get the game ball, nobody should ever get a game ball in Iowa City for the rest of the season, because just fantastic. Gotta love those Australian punters. Gotta love them.
Yep.
You guys like stats?
Yes.
You guys big stats guys?
Oh, you know it.
Since you guys may have seen this on Twitter, but since Iowa started 6-0 last year, they have scored 11 offensive touchdowns, period.
How many games is that, Josh?
It's 9 games.
Oh.
That's 66 points. their defense and special teams have scored in that same 9-game span 77 points.
Oh my gosh.
So
Somehow this is the same sport as App State, North Carolina.
this is the same.
My favorite tweet
Iowa
of all this, because
all season scored the same amount of points that App State and North Carolina combined for in a fourth quarter.
Oh man.
my favorite tweet from this weekend about that game was that this is all an elaborate prank to force Iowa State into watching the game film of that game, because that's the game we get. We get the annual battle for the Cyhawk Trophy next week, which first team to 5 wins that game.
That's next step rivalry pettiness.
Yes, it is.
If it's somehow true. But the thing is, we know it's not true. And we
Yeah.
also know Iowa is somehow going to be 8-4,
Yes.
9-3 at
Yes.
the end of the year. They're going to beat Michigan or Ohio State or Wisconsin. This team drives you insane. I don't know how Hawkeye fans do it.
I don't either.
I truly don't know how you guys do it.
You know what
Iowa
I think it is?
State,
I think they
I don't know
love
how you
Hunter
do
so
it.
much that like that was
Punting
just
is winning.
yes.
Punting is winning. You know what? Somebody message us. How do I get one of those shirts? I
Yes.
will absolutely buy one. I would love a punting is winning shirt with the corn husk on it or something. Send that my way. I will absolutely buy one of those. That punting is winning in Iowa City. It is.
Mm-hmm.
Punting is winning.
Yeah, that'll be a fun game next week for sure, and I believe that game is in Iowa City. So mark your calendars now. All right, we touched on North Carolina App State. They survived despite just trying to hand App State the win in so many different ways, and App State saying
Bizarre.
no, we insist that you win. The other ACC scare was that, and we kind of saw this one coming. I mean, we saw the App State North Carolina game coming too. It was almost too obvious of an upset to happen. Was North Carolina State heading to East Carolina, where historically they've had a lot of problems beating the Pirates. And that was the case. It looked like there was a couple opportunities for them to break the game open. They get stuffed at the goal line a couple times. They fumble, just some chaos. But at the end, East Carolina gets what we think is a game-tying touchdown, extra point, just completely shanked. Just true college kicker fashion. And when you think, you know what, that was a good run by East Carolina, that's a tough game, they should hold their head up high, they should be proud of their performance. NC State and Devin Leary, who will be, I think, one of the best quarterbacks in college football, throws just a horrendous interception. And it's right back to East Carolina, and all of a sudden, with under 3 minutes remaining, it looks like they've got a chance to kick a game-winning field goal and upset 13th-ranked NC State. And they get that field goal lined up. It's about 45 yards, and that field goal is missed, and that is your ball game. So, Jonny, I'll let you speak to this because you picked NC State in your playoff, and for a second I thought you had given them the curse of the Jonny playoff guarantee, but they survive.
Yeah, I thought it was happening to NC State and not Utah earlier in the day, because I always lose one of my teams immediately.
Yeah.
So that was NC State really the offense worried me. You know, I thought the defense was fine overall. Just hung around. East Carolina has some real ball players. Like, they're going to have a good season.
Mm-hmm.
They're absolutely going to make a bowl game for sure. Playing on the road, record crowd at East Carolina. I'd also just like to say hats off to East Carolina.
Yeah.
It was so cool to see. Such a good crowd. NC State to be willing to play there. Virginia Tech losing to Old Dominion, but in Norfolk was awesome. North Carolina playing in Boone, amazing. Like, I ask ACC teams, why? Why would you do this to yourself? But in the same breath, I say thank you, because it was so fun to see them playing on the road against these schools. And they were all fantastic games right down to the very end. I thought the defense, again, was relatively okay. They created some turnovers. I was really disappointed in the run game for NC State, and I think it put unnecessary pressure on Leary to be able to force the ball in. He did lose his number 1 wide receiver from last year, and I think that was really felt. I thought the offensive line did just fine. Wide receivers just weren't getting open, or they were dropping the ball, and the running backs weren't finding the hole properly. So I am a little worried about the skill positions after that game for NC State. But again, I do give NC State a lot of more credit than some of these other schools for playing that game. It's not a Power 5 opponent, so people were probably like, oh, yeah, whatever. No, like you were willing to go on the road against a quality opponent, and that's what they really should be seen as, and you found a way to win. Now, that is not what a college football contender looks like. That's not what an ACC champion looks like. So we don't even need to talk about playoff. You're not winning the division playing like that on offense. You found a way to win. This is classic for the ACC, though. You survived. And you know what? Survival was enough for them. And you'll take it. You'll take it and run with it. I would say NC State, North Carolina, and even Pitt beating West Virginia on Thursday night. You all could have lost.
Yep.
Maybe you all deserve to lose. But ultimately, you did find a way to survive those really, really tough games. And for two of you on the road, I give you a lot of credit, but major concerns for all of those teams.
Yeah. Well, with that win, they face Charleston Southern, Texas Tech, and UConn with the remaining games in September. So what does that mean? That means that they are likely 4-0 heading to Clemson on October 1st in what should be a terrific ACC showdown and could very well be the kind of, if you will, the Atlantic title game, even though it's October. I know there's plenty of football to be played after that, but that's kind of the way some of those games go. All right. I know there was other games that we could talk about, and I think for sake of time, we'll have to skip those, even though, just the chaos that we had with Florida State LSU. You had Arkansas Cincinnati was also a fascinating game. I think even despite some of the losses, Cincinnati has proven that they're going to be, once again, perhaps the most difficult group of 5 team to handle in a game that, quite frankly, they did not play well in and still nearly had it at the end, only losing by 7 points. But there was news that came out on Friday, and it wasn't necessarily shocking because it's something we've heard about for a while. And it is the fact that we are getting a 12-team playoff, potentially as soon as 2024. It sounds like at the latest 2026. And of course, we've been pretty vocal about what we would like to see from the college football playoff on this show. When the news broke, we had several people on Twitter ask us, all right, what do you think about this? And I think if you've been listening to the show for a while, you know where we're headed with this. Before I go on an epic rant of ridiculous proportion, do you guys have any thoughts on this playoff? Because I've got thoughts.
Josh, go ahead.
Man, I am conflicted on this because I really liked Aaron's 6-game proposal a little while ago. However, now that we're going to see it, I don't know, I was having a conversation with a Baylor fan today, and obviously there's excitement for basically anyone who's not Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and one other random team, to get in. At the same time, and it's too early, and this might be a false equivalency, but I feel like we did the numbers. I have to pull out the episode that we did this. I feel like I pulled the numbers of here's who in the playoff era, here's who 5 through 12 would have been. Mm-hmm. Let's make these matchups. And we all went through and we're like, do we see anything different than a win for the first maybe 5 teams? And so the question is, yes, there's more football, there's more content. And maybe that just means a few of these bowl games, how they're structuring them changes a little bit practically. And so, but you're still adding extra games. Is it bye weeks for the first 4?
It is. So in theory,
so that helps.
That adds 2 weeks to the season.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's a better compromise. But I think realistically, do you see any major change that happens do those first 4 teams, those teams 1 through 4 seeded, do you see major upsets in that? And I can't, looking at the previous years, I can't say that I see any major upsets. Maybe a 4 seed, because there's been historical controversy about whether or not you're going to throw Baylor, TCU in, or Ohio State, or a 2-loss Power 5 versus an undefeated Group of 5, all of these things. And so you might see 1 or 2 upsets, but 1 through 3, I don't see it change. And so from a let's determine who the best team is of the year. I don't think this is the way to do it. And I don't think it's added anything incredibly valuable to the college football experience other than 2 more weeks of football and maybe some interesting matchups that will ultimately end up pretty much chalked. So maybe I'm a little bit harsher on it, but I'm not seeing the competitive advantage of making this a 12-team playoff.
Yeah. Let me tell you why I'm excited about it, because I know we're all going to kind of crap on the playoff expansion.
All right,
and,
that's probably good.
Oh, it's the worst. I hate
tell us
it.
why we're wrong.
And no, don't get me wrong. Like, my hope was 8. I think 12 is too many. I honestly don't really like a bye week. I think that gives just an even bigger advantage to an already like lopsided playoff in reality. So I don't like the bye week. Here's what I love. I love campus playoff matches. I love the idea of that Utah-Florida game being a playoff game. I love that.
Yeah.
And potentially that being in Salt Lake City instead. I love that Ohio State Notre Dame game, or a game like it, playoff game. Auburn, Penn State in a week. Like, we're going to see these type of games where we've been begging for home and home matchups early in the season. We're going to get them at the end at least. And so I love the idea in December, you're going to have Southern teams having to travel out west. They're going to have to go up north. You're going to have to play in the elements. I love that aspect of this. So that is great. I think one of the reasons, because I've been thinking about this a lot, why the three of us tend to not like this is because we're Ohio State fans. And if you're Ohio State, you're Alabama, you're Georgia, you're Clemson, you're Notre Dame, it really waters down the season for us. Why, like, that Ohio State game and losing to Michigan last year hurt so much because it was devastating to the season. The season was over. The Oregon loss was devastating because there was now no room for error. Alabama losing to A&M, it didn't keep them out of the playoff, but all of a sudden the urgency is ramped up. There's no room for error. If Alabama loses to Georgia in the SEC title game, they're done. They're done. And so that level of urgency is something that we absolutely love in the college football landscape. Instead of that being the case, we are going to have a lot more matchups that matter a ton in that upper to middle tier. And I think that will actually be fantastic, and that'll be fun. All of a sudden, that App State North Carolina game has huge implications. The Sun Belt is going to be plenty good enough to be that 6th conference champion that gets an automatic qualifier into the playoff. Like, so App State and East Carolina, those games matter not just as they're fun, they matter a ton. UTSA and Houston, like, that was just a fantastic game. We didn't even touch on it. That has huge playoff implications because it's, it's Conference USA and it's the American, and it's 2 of the best group of 5 teams. All of a sudden, these games don't just matter because they're fun and we love college football, which that's enough. They have big implications for them making the playoff. All of a sudden, like, these middling teams have an opportunity to make the playoff. Those games will have heightened awareness, more eyeballs on them. Those teams have hope. I understand that argument, and I really can get behind that. I think it's hard when you're at the top looking like, dang, like Ohio State and Alabama, as long as they don't lose more than 2 games, basically have a free pass into the playoff every year. Yeah, that's true. That is true. And that's the trade-off here. There's a real trade-off. There's not a perfect postseason model. Personally, I'd almost rather go back to the BCS, but this has already happened. And the 4-team playoff has been detrimental to the sport, with the focus solely on, if you're not making the playoff, why bother? I don't subscribe to that. But that thought has been out in the college football environment and culture, and that's in the firings and the hirings and players transferring. This will help. This will help. This will be less players sitting out bowl games because they'll be in the playoff. There's a lot of good here. It won't be perfect. it's not my preferred way of doing this, but there's a lot of pluses here. And so what I'm going to focus on, I'll be Mr. Positive today. Mr. Positive with the playoff expansion. I think it's great for those middle of the road teams. Heck, Minnesota, Oregon State, North Carolina, we're talking Mississippi State. You have hope now. You can make the playoff. There's a real chance of you doing that, where before it was like, hey, I hope we go 9-3. Maybe we get an upset and maybe we sneak into a New Year's Six game. Like now you can make it. You can do it. So I understand that. I think for those fans, this is great. This is great.
Jonny, I appreciate your positive attitude. I agree with some things, but I'm here to rain on everybody's parade because I despise this 12-team playoff. I hate it.
Tell us how you feel.
I hate it. Here, and I'm gonna, Jonny. Josh, you've always wanted a debate. I'm ready to debate because I disagree with you strongly on some of the things you just said.
Go.
I agree with some. I agree
go.
principally with like games on college campuses. The fact that like, I don't know, Auburn at some point would have to go to Michigan or something ridiculous. Like I don't know. That's great. I love that. In like December, January.
Go play in 20
I think that's awesome.
Listen,
that's
you guys are so good because you only play south of the Mason-Dixon. Come on.
Yeah.
Come up north.
That's right. Here's the thing. You talk about teams like Oregon State, Minnesota, Kentucky, teams that probably look at the current format and say, you know what, we will never, probably ever reach a top 4 ranking. But 12, we could get to 12. And even in the last 5 years, we have at points been ranked that high. What is the difference? Is there really hope when being 12, instead of going to a New Year's Six, a very respectable bowl game with a lot of national attention and a chance to build momentum in the next season, is that really less valuable than going to the college football playoff as a 12 seed, traveling to the 5 seed, and getting your head bashed in because there's such a difference between often the top 2 teams and everybody else, or on rare occasions, the top 3, 4 and everybody else. I don't think there will ever be a year, barring some weird injury situation where the 12 seed had crazy injuries early on and finally got to the healthy team that they were supposed to be the whole season. I don't think we will ever see a 12 seed beat a 5 seed. I don't think we will ever, and by ever, I mean, it will be as rare as a 16 seed beating a 1 seed. It's not going to happen. It'll have to be very rare. And also, there's only been a couple years that I can think of in the 14 playoff where the 5th seed has had a reasonable shot that, like, capable of winning a national title. I would say 2014 TCU, because that offense was really good, and I think they played Ole Miss that year in a New Year's Six and beat them like 49-3. 2015 Ohio State is another team that comes to mind. Maybe there's 1 or 2 more of even being capable of winning a national title. What my concern is we are taking all of the great games from the regular season and we are smashing it into the final 2 weeks of like late December, January, when, oh, by the way, the NFL is ramping up their postseason. We're taking all of that away. You brought up the Ohio State-Michigan game. I was at that game. That was devastating because not only did you lose to Michigan, not only did you lose your chance at a Big Ten championship, but the college football playoff went poof, out the door. If the circumstances are different, where there's a 12-team playoff, and oh, by the way, in a 12-team playoff, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, those teams are getting in the playoff every single year. The biggest complaint about the college football playoff, I should say one of the biggest complaints, has been, oh, it's the same teams every year. Number one, there's never been a year in which we've had the same 4 teams in the college football playoff. But I understand, right? I mean, look at who's won. It's been Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and like a weird year with LSU. And there's your national champions. That part's not going to change, and it's even less likely to change because Alabama is getting in the playoff every single year. And oh, by the way, they've only missed it once so far. Only once. So if you want more teams to actually have a chance at a college football national championship, a 12-team playoff is hurting that. There are injury concerns. Think about last year. I know this is Alabama's favorite talking point. What if Jameson Williams doesn't tear his ACL in the national championship game? Does Alabama win? Of course, Crimson Tide fans will tell you yes. I'm not as confident, but it's certainly a different game.
I'm with the Tide fans.
Yeah,
sure.
I would probably lean that way. I would probably lean that way too. If you are adding 2 more games to college football, Josh, a little bit to your point, it will become who is the healthiest team. And more often than not, the healthiest team, or not even the healthiest team, but the deepest team, will still be the Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Georgias. So that gives them an even better chance to win the national championship. I don't know. If I'm 12 seed Kansas State, let's say Kansas State has a tremendous season, they go 10-2, and they face a 5 seed Michigan. I don't know.
Oh, I think they can win that game.
Well, okay,
Now,
Michigan is probably the wrong
counterpoints.
team to put in the conversation.
Well, but Aaron, here's my point with the 5 seed. How
you go
often
first.
is the 5 seed? We're talking about TCU.
Yeah.
Like we're like that great TCU team. We're talking about that great Ohio State team. That's a rarity at the 5. Honestly, at the 5, a lot of times the 5 and the 4 is kind of crap. I absolutely think the 12 can beat the 5 because last year's Notre Dame team, they could have easily lost to the 12 seed. I'm sorry, that Notre Dame team was okay, but they weren't anything special. Where Notre Dame was ranked 5th, and I can't remember who was ranked 12th, but Utah was ranked 11th coming into that. I actually think the gap between 5 and 12 is less than 4 to 5 many years. And I think what that means is recruiting wise, you might be able to hold on to some kids. They might actually want to transfer into your program knowing that they at least have the opportunity. They don't feel like they have to go to Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma just to get eyeballs on them. They actually see that there's hope. They can win that first round matchup. Can they beat Alabama, Georgia? Probably not. But you could beat Notre Dame. You could beat Michigan. You could beat Texas A&M. I think those are like reasonable takes. And I do like that at least in the system, they're rewarding teams for winning their conference. You cannot be a top 4 seed if you didn't win your conference. And it's the top 6 ranked conference champions are automatic bids in. Now, will the next 6 in there? Most likely we're going to see probably 3 more SEC teams, 3 or 4 more SEC teams. We're probably going to see 2 more Big Ten teams in there and then slide in Notre Dame because Notre Dame's not a conference champion. I also like that this slights Notre Dame. That's awesome. I love that. They will never get a bye.
Join or die. Join or die.
Join or die. But I do like that. Now, the question remains, honestly, does this even make sense with playoff expansion? That's my conference expansion. Does this really even make sense? Does the Pac-12 minus USC and UCLA actually deserve an automatic bid? And I know it doesn't say the Pac-12 is one of those 6, but even on their down years, they're usually still going to be ranked ahead of the group of 5 conference champions. There's pluses and minuses here. I don't really love it. I think there's some acceptance you have to have that college football is never going to be a completely equal and equitable sport. It's always been dominated by a few powers in their decade and in their heyday. Always. Look throughout the history of college football. It's Miami, Florida State, it's Nebraska, it's Ohio State, it's Michigan. It's cyclical. It's cyclical in which teams are doing it right now. Alabama's on an unprecedented run, but it won't last forever. That sounds insane, but it won't. It won't last forever. It's going to be different traditional powers in the next decade that will take over. Ohio State, it probably won't last forever. That sounds terrible to say. Clemson, personally, I think it's already over. They're not going to be bad, but I think it's done. And you wouldn't have said that 4 years ago. But I think they're already coming back down. You could argue Miami might be coming back. This is cyclical. The sport's always been that way. It's dominated by 2, 3, 4 teams within the decade. Don't make it what it's not. I understand that argument from you, Aaron. I think we've already just gone down the path and blown it up. So at this point, let's just make it as good as we can. I think 12's a little too much. I understand the expansion. I think it's great for the rest of the teams minus those 8 that have a real shot at winning the national title. Because, I understand, do you really want to get blown out? I think it's good overall. It's good to have that opportunity to win that first game. I think there is a huge benefit there. It's hard to see it right now with how dominant Alabama and Georgia are, I do think there's some good here. I really do. I think it's still not my preferred method, but I think that there is some real good aspects of playoff expansion.
There's good, but I still think the bad outweighs the good. I think we're going to look at this in 10 years and think, wow, yeah, the 14 playoff and I'm not saying the 14 playoff is perfect. Absolutely not. But when there's only 3 or 4 teams that actually have a legitimate chance at a national title, then why in the world are we watering down the regular season with this 12-team playoff and this fake notion of, oh yeah, 12 seed Pitt from last season or 9 seed Ole Miss? Like, yeah, you've got a chance at a playoff. That'll really get your recruits going. Like, that's not going to change recruiting at all. A recruit's not going to look at Ole Miss.
By,
I don't think
whoever's the 3 seed, and is that really gonna? Oh
but
yeah,
Pitt could have beat Notre Dame in that first round, 5-12. Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison play,
and that's actually a good question. So here, and I'm
they
just
could beat that Notre Dame
team.
team.
What's easier? How is this functionally different from our talk of like when we go into March in a few months? In your video that you give very well said, it's on our YouTube channel on how to pick brackets.
Mm-hmm.
You do say upsets first few weeks and then chalk the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And so realistically, there's probably only 5 teams that could have a shot.
Yes.
And there's always a favorite. So maybe what is the functional difference between a 68 team playoff, if you will, for March Madness and a 12 team for football? I think the same issues exist. Maybe a bit less parity or more parity. I always forget which is the one we prefer. More competition.
Yeah, we want more parity. Yeah,
more parity. In basketball, just slightly. At the same time, it's going to be Villanova, Butler. A Big Ten team who's hot. In
that case, though, Josh, the parity is not because of the NCAA tournament. The parity is because of the nature of the sport of basketball. Football is very different. College football is very different. Everyone's saying, well, the NFL has 32 franchises and they let, X amount of teams in. I don't care. This is college football. There's a reason why college football is why I prefer college football to the NFL. It's great. Root for whatever one you like better. But trying to make college football the NFL, which, by the way, I think most casual fans are trying to do, which I get. Here's just a look. Here's what we're going to do by watering down the regular season. If we had a college football playoff, a 12-team model, you would have 3 weeks after Ohio State beats the brakes off of Michigan State, beats them by 49. They have a rematch in the college football playoff, which is gross. And what was the point of even playing that game in the regular season? You would likely have a Bama-Ole Miss matchup in the second round, assuming Ole Miss beats Oklahoma State, after Alabama beat them by 21. You have a Notre Dame-Cincinnati game that already happened in the regular season and was a huge part of the miraculous and amazing story of Cincinnati reaching the playoff. And that's another reason why people say, well, UCF got left out that one year. Yeah, they did, and I didn't love that. But here's the deal. There are so few teams after the dust settles of conference realignment that will actually be in a situation in jeopardy of being left out of the playoff. Because think about the teams that have been there, fringe teams, group of 5 teams in the playoff. Cincinnati, who made it, by the way, UCF. I'll throw in Houston because Houston's got a chance to go 12-0 this year. And BYU. Guess what? All 4 of those teams are going to the Big 12. So that conversation's over probably as soon as next year. I love App State. I love some of these Sun Belt teams. Louisiana had a year where they were 12-1. Those are very, and even Boise State. Throw whoever you want. Those are very different teams than the UCFs and the Cincinnatis of the world. So the conversation of, what happens if a group of 5 team goes undefeated and misses the playoff? We're almost to the point where that's never going to happen either. But you're watering down the regular season, which, by the way, the entire regular season is the playoff. You have whatever X amount of team playoff because it happens during the regular season. Ohio State Notre Dame was great because a loss to Ohio State's season completely derails their season. And that's why that game meant so much. It meant so much to have Notre Dame, number 5, traveling to number 2 Ohio State. If that happens in a 12-team format where, Ohio State can lose 3 games and get in, yeah, I'm still watching it and I'm still expecting my team to win. But it's kind of meh as far as the results go. Who cares? Because it doesn't matter. Because, we'll play again in 4 months. So you're taking what is a college football playoff for the entire year and you're shifting it all into 2 weeks. And yes, there's some good out of it. And yes, when we get to a situation where we have 20 team conferences, yeah, I think you may have to expand because you could legitimately have 4 teams capable of winning a national title in the same conference. And that will be an issue. So if we had to expand, look, I get it. 8 teams was the clear and obvious way to go. There's no weird bye weeks. 1 through 4 is going to completely dominate this playoff. And I think when we look at this 10 years from now, we're going to think this was pointless. Why did we bother? And the reason obviously is money and conference expansion and everything that goes into that. Money's the driving force through all of this. It's not going to improve the play on the field. If anything, I think it hurts it ultimately. But and there is positives. I'm not trying to say the whole thing's horrible, but I do think it will be, in the end, detrimental to the sport of college football and what makes college football so great. So, yeah. But we had some great games this week. So I was a little upset on Friday, and then Saturday I was sitting there watching all these games like, this is amazing. But again, I will say North Carolina State has playoff implications. They lose to ECU in a 12-team playoff. Everyone's like, oh yeah, good upset, ECU, yay. They lose this season. It's like, wow, that's a huge upset. That's a bummer for North Carolina State. I don't know. Part of me loves the 14 playoff because of that.
But you beat North Carolina State, and I think you're thinking of it in the wrong way. All of a sudden, East Carolina is the thought for the playoff.
But
there.
Johnny, that doesn't make any sense because it's solely based on conference champion, which means non-conference doesn't matter. It might as well be preseason to East Carolina. They could go 0-3.
But it does matter because that's why they could be a top 6 ranked conference champion. Like, you have the edge over the ACC champion. Like, what if NC State wins the ACC still? What if NC State even just has a good year? Those wins are critical. Like, Cincinnati beating Notre Dame mattered because Notre Dame finished 11-1. Mm-hmm. If Notre Dame fell off the map, then it would have been like, oh, okay, like, cool, but that's not great. Like, that's not actually that helpful. Maybe Cincinnati doesn't get put in if Notre Dame, like, just falls off the rails last season. So, like, I agree with you. Like, it's watering it down at the top. I don't know if it is actually for the rest of the teams, though. And I understand your point of, like, who cares almost because they're not at the same level of football. But I think it's watering it down at the top. I don't know if it really is in the upper middle tier. I think those games might have actually more to them.
I just fail to see how a New Year's Six is truly any different than a playoff. Than reaching a playoff in which you have absolutely no chance. To me, but I'd rather be focused on.
Have been down, and the New Year's Six, like, people don't care about them anymore. Even watching the Rose Bowl the last few years has felt kind of off.
That's why I would argue that's the perception that's the perception for us. That's the perception for us. But if Houston goes 11-1 and reaches a New Year's Six. For them, and it's the same thing. If people don't care about bowl games, that's fine. They can do whatever they want. But a bowl game for a team that's been trying desperately, maybe for years, to get there and finally reaches it and wins and gets those extremely valuable extra practices in bowl season, that means the world to them. And that's ultimately like, yeah, I personally love bowl games. I understand people that don't, but I love them. But more importantly, it's extremely important to the team. And that's what I wonder, from the team's perspective, just reaching a college football playoff, again, in which they have no hope of actually winning, is that actually more valuable for that team than just reaching a New Year's Six? And I think the answer is, I think they're about the same. I don't think it's that much different that Houston is a 10-2 Houston team makes it to the playoff as a 12 seed instead of a New Year's Six. But we can agree to disagree on that. So. All right. Well, we do need to move on and who knows how much I was able to keep in because, my goodness, the time has gotten away from us. But I kind of figured it would with that conversation. So let's rip through some picks of the week. And it's kind of an expanded picks of the week because we've got a lot to talk about. The NFL is starting this week. Mm-hmm. So you heard our division winners last week. Real quick, we'll just run through and give you our Super Bowl winners and our regular season MVP. So I'm going to say that the Buffalo Bills defeat the San Francisco 49ers in the Super Bowl. And I've got Josh Allen as my MVP. I mean, he's just going to do it all again. He's going to run. He's going to throw. He's a great leader. He's got some good weapons. I think the Bills do it. He was a coin flip away of who knows how far he was going to go. So Bills all the way for me.
I'm also taking Bills in the Super Bowl, losing to Tampa Bay. And this is not because I necessarily think that Tampa Bay is going to be the better team. I do. This is, if I could pull out my conspiracy corner clock, this is Tom Brady's
be the
final
worst.
year, and the NFL like narrative directors or whoever they have in charge of this
Yep.
stuff. This is exactly like this is going to be a Peyton Manning final season-esque where like he's going to get it. This is going to be his retirement year. The one more time to solidify the legacy, and then he's going to finally talk to his kids after this season. And like it's not I don't think that's based on skills or like I like the Bills. Like I think they're a strong team, and the NFL doesn't care. And they will put Tom Brady in there however they can. This is the final great. This is my one conspiracy hot take is that the NFL has these games planned.
That would make me furious.
Oh yes. Oh no, I don't want it to happen.
Buffalo doesn't deserve to lose to him again. Don't do that to Buffalo.
It would be so sad. Listen, I'm not saying it's great. I'm not saying I'm happy about it. I'm not doing it. That's Goodell's fault.
Oh, it's horrible. That's horrifying, Josh. Okay. I'm going to make it more fun.
Okay.
Because everybody's picking Buffalo. And listen, I completely get it. I think they have the best roster. It's rare that the Super Bowl favorite coming into the season actually makes it and wins it. Rare. I mean, it happens, but I don't have a reason to not pick Buffalo. I really don't. Buffalo should make the Super Bowl, should win the Super Bowl. They should win it. For all those reasons, I'm picking the Bengals to make it back to the Super Bowl. They play the Rams. I actually really feel strongly about the Rams making the Super Bowl again.
Yeah.
I know Super Bowl hangover is a big thing. The NFC is terrible. It is wide open. There's no one there to take the crown from the Rams. I think they make it back to the Super Bowl.
And think about all the moves they made in the offseason too. I mean, somehow I don't know where they get the money from, but they found a way.
Yeah, some teams know how to use the cap, and some are used by the cap. Looking at you, Chicago.
Oh my!
But the AFC is loaded. You wouldn't surprise me if you put the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Bills. Heck, even it would surprise me the Chargers because they find a way to blow it. Denver, Baltimore. I think you say any of those teams, I'm like, sure. Like, sure. I don't think any of those options are really that insane to put in the Super Bowl from the AFC. So I think it's who's the healthiest and who's hottest at the right time. It won't necessarily be the best team in the AFC. I think the Bengals have as good a shot as anybody to be that team, and I'll be a homer for once. So I will pick the Bengals to make it back and win it this time. Josh Allen is the MVP, though. That's the narrative coming into the season. I think he has a chance to be right there as potentially the best quarterback by the end of this year. If not, he's just going to have the best story, and he hasn't won it yet. I'd say Russell Wilson has the potential to be a close second here, though. Just storyline of him going to Denver. If he plays an outstanding season, Russell could definitely be right there, too.
I like it. In the same vein, we'll move to our actual picks of the week, where the scoreboard reads myself with 40, Josh 38, Jonny 36, perhaps the biggest separation we've had this entire time, and that's because Ohio State beat Notre Dame 21-10. I was the closest score with 35-21. I did think Notre Dame would cover. They did, although it was still lower scoring than I expected. So that takes us in to the NFL season on Thursday. We open things up with the Buffalo Bills and the Los Angeles Rams. I'm going to take the Bills. I think, as I just said, I've got them in my Super Bowl. I think they get the season off to a good start with a victory, although, man, this should be a really, really good game.
Man. Go for it, Jonny.
No. I'm waiting.
Oh, wait. I did forget to enter it in. Okay, I am sorry. I thought I had entered it in already. I am also going Buffalo.
All right.
Yes. So sorry. I am also going Bills.
All right, cool.
My bad. I thought I had typed that in already.
No, it's okay. That's why I waited, though. If you're both picking Buffalo, I'm going with the Rams.
Oh my gosh.
They're
knew that.
the Rams.
And that's
The Rams
why.
are home. They did win the Super Bowl. I'm going with Josh's strategy. Just going with the opposite. I'm on a losing streak
I
right
don't
now.
always
so
do that.
you guys both got Buffalo. I'm going with the Rams. You know, Buffalo has more to prove and should be ready to go. But Matthew Stafford sounds like the elbow's fine. And hey, should be a heck of a game. Crowd should be great. I'm excited to watch it myself.
Yeah,
I'll go with the Rams.
I'm looking forward to it. That sounds good. We'll see how it goes. Johnny taking the approach of either he's going to catch up or he's going to fall even further behind. So this is could be a potentially very interesting and important pick.
I just want to make it clear that's not my strategy. My strategy is not, and I will say my record of just picking the opposite of you guys is not actually that great.
Yeah.
Picking the opposite of you guys to be the opposite of you guys, that never works for me. You always go with your hearts, and you go with kind of what just your gut, and you kind of go, yeah.
My heart says Buffalo. It will always say Buffalo in my heart. It will always.
Yeah. All right, one thing we're going to add to our picks of the week with the NFL getting started is our NFL Eliminator. You might be familiar with this kind of game, but if you're not, let me break it down real quick. So each week, the three of us are going to select an NFL team who we think is going to win a game that week, but we can only pick one team for the season. So I'll just start. I've got the New Orleans Saints going to Atlanta and winning that game, but that means that I am not able to pick the Saints the rest of the season. So if I win, which is necessary to move on, let's say I win, I don't know who the Saints are playing in week 2, but I can't pick the Saints, even if the Saints are playing the worst team in the NFL. So there's a bit of strategy on, yes, you need to pick a winning team, but you don't want to just immediately pick the best team playing the worst team. It'll make sense. So I've got the Saints, and we'll see basically whoever's the lastest longing player in this competition will get a point in our standings. So this is our NFL Eliminator Challenge. I've got the Saints over Atlanta. Yeah, it's worth a point. Yeah.
I think it should be worth more than 1 point if we get deep into this, because that's picking a lot right in a row.
Well,
personally,
we can debate this. We
can
debate
some stakes outside of points.
That's possible. So anyways, I've got New Orleans. Josh, who are you going with in week 1?
Week 1, I'm taking Baltimore over the Jets, and it's because it's the Jets. And
yes.
I will not do that every week because it'd be really easy to just be like,
well, that's a strategy.
Basically, pick the 2 teams that the Jets will most likely beat. Because at some point, I will. If I go all the way, I have to pick the Jets for something. At some point, is be my guess. But this week, I'm going to hopefully play it safe and assume that the Baltimore Ravens, who are favored to potentially make a run this year, will do what they're supposed to do against the Jets, who are yet again figuring out if they are in fact a football team.
Yes. And no Zach Wilson too, so that's a good pick.
Yeah.
And that also,
Yes. You don't believe in Joe Flacco or Mike White?
Elite quarterback, Johnny.
Elite.
Well,
that's right. Yeah, the demons of Baltimore will come back up again. Mike White.
Yeah, we're talking about Mike White.
You guys took my first 2 picks, but I still feel really solid about picking Denver Monday night to beat Seattle. I don't think Russell Wilson's going to lose.
Yeah.
Well, it is week 1, but he's going back to Seattle. Also, Seattle's terrible. I don't see Seattle really scoring a whole lot of points against that Denver defense. Forget about Russell. He'll find ways with Denver to score. I don't really see a path to victory here for the Seahawks. So I feel good. Russ and the Broncos get on track early on. You know, I'm a big Broncos fan this season. So Broncos country, let's ride.
Nice. Am I crazy that I considered picking Carolina this week over Cleveland?
Hey, you're not.
Okay.
I really think
I thought about it too.
Carolina. I mean, I'm cheering for Carolina.
Yeah, me too.
I think a lot of people are honestly cheering for the Panthers.
Yes.
So,
truly.
NFL, congrats. You have a middling game that shouldn't attract anyone, and tons of people are going to watch that game. Congratulations.
Good job, everyone.
Yeah.
We did it.
Nice. So that's our Eliminator Challenge. We'll see. We'll come back. Obviously, the timing will be a little weird with a Monday night game next week, but we'll figure it out. We'll see who's still standing. If we go 3-0, we'll see what happens. So we'll keep it rolling. All right. it is time for what we're following, and I know we're running out of time, so I'll make mine pretty quick. We drafted our fantasy football league, kind of the fifth and goal sports league, so the three of us and kind of the rest of the team, I guess, if you will, behind that works some of the behind the scenes stuff for us. So enjoyed that. I think I've got a good team. ESPN told me I had the best draft, which means I'm probably doomed. There's no chance I'll actually win.
Oh no, you had a good draft.
Well, oh, thank you.
I hated mine.
Oh, okay. Well, so be it. I did have the first pick, and I did get Indianapolis Colts running back Jonathan Taylor. So I am pumped about that. But I realized that we really, and I should point out that the draft was randomized. That's how we've determined who drafts when for years. But there was a very obvious and better way to determine this. You hold a draft combine to determine who drafts in what order. And so I've seen videos of it's like an obstacle course that people are running. They're like chugging a beer, they're flipping a cup, they're making a basket, they're throwing a football, they're tossing a cornhole bag, and then an all-out sprint at the end. And then based on your total time, that's your draft order. That's fantastic. In the case of our league, we're spread out all across the United States, so a little difficult to do that for us. But if there's ever a time when a bunch of us are together, I think that might be what we have to do. And I'll say Tyler and Michael, who you'll hear next week, talk about what rookies they think will have the best fantasy football seasons. They're in this league too, so we'll have some good back and forth. We'll let you know who's matching up against who. I don't believe the three of us are matching up against each other at all this week, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of fun trash talk, and we'll kind of keep you in the loop and as far as how our fantasy teams are doing this year. So that's what I'm following.
Guys, do you ever have that feeling like you wake up or like you're having a conversation with someone and you're like, what's the name of that one thing that I remember from my childhood? It's on the tip of my tongue and I just, it's like it's a deep cut memory, and like the nostalgia, you're like, I want to go back to that thing. I just can't remember what it is.
Choco Taco.
Exactly. And so, which by the way, I'm still seeing them around, but
That's good.
not as much, but that happens over the course of, I want to say, let's say 3+ years, if not closer to 20. Because on Twitter a few weeks ago, actually, no, just last week. No, I'm sorry, just 3 days ago, according to our recording schedule. Guy posted on Twitter that he and his girlfriend have spent years trying to figure out a specific cartoon character. I'll send you guys the tweets in our group. But this guy has been trying since 2019 actively to find this one cartoon character that was in the backgrounds of a photo that was taken in the mid 90s, if not early 90s. It's just like a screenshot of some random character, like some cartoon, like Disney-esque character. And he's like, it ended up getting shared and viewed 11 million times over the course of this 2 or 3 year period. For the longest time, he would reverse image search to this character. It would only go back to the Reddit post that he had posted a while ago. Now, finally, some random guy, literally not a professional detective, not a guy who like is a media expert. He was just like, hey, wait a second, I kind of remember this, and pulled up an unreleased digitized VHS copy of a Canadian one-off Christmas special from 1991. And it was so deep cut that it wasn't even uploaded on YouTube. Wow. It is now uploaded on YouTube because someone found a VHS, ripped it, and uploaded it to YouTube. So I'm going to watch that tonight. But it took over 3 years, and wow. Literally, I think he said about 11. He said he guessed about 11 million like views, and like how going viral on different platforms. He's like, there were hundreds of suggestions, and literally this was the only guy to suggest this like random cartoon from 1991. And it's not my normal crazy like, oh, it turns out there's a massive cheese cave in Missouri. But I just think it's very cool to sometimes see the internet come together. Aww. And over the course of 3 days, half of the United States go, oh, let's see if we can find this one random cartoon character. So congratulations, internet. You've done something. You've done one thing okay. Take the night off. Please. Nothing else today. Please, nothing else today.
Very nice.
What I'm following this week is it happened on Friday night. So Serena Williams played her final match in her incredible tennis career. So definitely needed to make sure that we spent some time talking about Serena. US Open's been fantastic. I know we didn't have an opportunity to talk about it last week because everything is just insane right now. It's hard to include tennis. Don't worry, guys. I'll make sure that we get a little bit of that in here. Rafael Nadal just got knocked off by Tiafoe. Djokovic isn't competing. There's some been great upsets on the women's side as well. Go Coco Gauff. We're really excited about that. I'd be thrilled to see her get her first title. But this is about Serena Williams. Serena, it's kind of hard to imagine like her really not being out on the court. You saw so many people though these last few matches making sure that they came out because it is in New York City, trying to see the last time that she might be playing. She's had the most incredible career for any, maybe just tennis player in general ever. Serena is 40. Congratulations to her. She seems at peace with her decision, looking forward to doing other things other than tennis in her life. That's awesome. Like, I think we oftentimes see athletes and you almost worry about them because they're hanging on for so long that they don't know what to do besides that sport. So great to see her so excited about the next part of her life. But just, if you're not familiar with tennis, a few things about Serena, just so that you can have some understanding of how incredible of a player she is. So, she is 40 years old. She turned pro in 95. She's been a pro in tennis longer than we've been alive.
Wow.
Any of us on this podcast. She was 14 at the time. Insane. She has 23 Grand Slam titles just in singles. That's not including her doubles, her gold medal, other fantastic accomplishments that she's had. That's the most in the Open era, second behind court overall and all time. She has 858 tour victories.
Oh my gosh.
858. Just absolutely insane. If you ever actually took the time to watch her, which you should, just look up some highlight videos if you haven't. The power and ferocity and velocity she had on her serves set her apart, just unable in her prime for others to be able to match her. Just absolutely fantastic. She was very gracious after she finished, giving a lot of credit to her parents and to her sister, Venus, who also was a phenomenal tennis player as well. There's going to be a youth movement in the women's tennis game now. So, but most of the time, for tennis players, you kind of peak late 20s. And by the time you get into your 30s, you really fade. Women, it's even earlier than that in the tennis game. So for Serena to hang on till 40 and be still so good was really, really cool to see. Even in the match, I know she lost the match clearly. She was just fighting tooth and nail for every single point. I believe it took 6 match points to finally put her away. So it was just a great match. But Serena, fantastic accomplishment. Congrats on a fantastic career. It's going to be weird not seeing her out there for those major tournaments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jonny, thanks for bringing that up. That is truly a fitting way to kind of end this episode. You're right. The U.S. Open's been just chaotic. Medvedev lost as well. I think he was ranked number 1 coming into this U.S. Open tournament on the men's side. But you're right. Really, there's not enough superlatives to use to describe Serena Williams' career. She's the GOAT, and there's no other person really in the conversation. So congrats to her. I will say, just thank you for listening to this episode. We're curious what your thoughts are on the college football playoff. I know you heard the 3 of ours, and we had some disagreement, but we're curious to hear yours because I know that's a pretty divisive subject. I know a lot of people have opinions about it, and I'm curious too. Again, Jonny, you said it. We're Ohio State fans, so our perspective of this is a little bit different. Let's say, Kansas State, who's got a chance to reach number 12. Is a 12-team playoff, is that a game changer for you? If you're like a Kansas State fan, or if you're even like a Baylor or Oklahoma State fan or something along those lines. I know I've just picked all Big 12 schools, but you get my point. If you are a fan of one of those teams or even Miami or whoever, I'd be very curious to know your thoughts because maybe that is a game changer for you and for your program. And so maybe I need to go back on what I said. But anyways, let us know. Hit us up on Twitter at Fifth Goal Sports. We want to say thank you to those that ask us about our thoughts initially on Twitter when the news broke. We love having conversations about stuff like that or even just chatting about crazy college football games. I know we had some fun with Old Dominion beating Virginia Tech. That was a fun conversation to have too. So we love that. We'd love to talk to you. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, YouTube, all the places as well. So that wraps us up for this episode. I should say also, obviously we didn't even touch on week 2 games. If you want more college football talk, then hop over to YouTube where myself and Jonny, we will preview week 2 of college football on our Football Mondays show that's available on YouTube and on our website, fifthandgoalsports.com. All right, that wraps us up. We'll see you guys next week. Have a good one. Oh yeah, I meant to throw in there the fact that we'd be at Miami on Saturday, but that's all right.
It's okay.
It won't change anything in the podcast necessarily. So
yeah, I don't know how we're gonna do this fall once everything really gets going.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think one of you guys said it. We could literally do the podcast every day, and I don't think we'd have like any repeat content.
Yeah.
Like, which is madness. Yeah. Like, sports talk shows will have no issue in the fall. Yeah. None. Like, we get sick and tired of them talking about the Cowboys all the time. It might be the first time in history that the Cowboys might not really be talked about. Yeah. Like, because there will be too many other things actually happening that actually matter.
Yeah.
That we might not talk about them. Maybe I'm just being a little too optimistic.
Well, YouTube, thanks for hanging in there with us. We're always glad to have some people join us in our live stream, and we're just going to keep it rolling. Jonny and I are recording our football show next, where we are diving into some week 2. We've got more best bets. We've got our week 2 picks. We'll kind of update the leaderboard because we made our week 1 picks, and I think we both went 6-4, so not too shabby there. Some surprises. I think we probably. I think some of the group of 5 teams we might have had overrated a bit. At least I did in my picks. But anyways, we'll talk about all that next. So
I just got busted for one really overvalued, overconfident. Like, it was just one. The rest of them I did totally right, but I got busted in one game that I was really confident in, and clearly shouldn't
I'm looking
been.
at it now. Yes.
Yeah, other than that, I did fine.
Yeah, you did.
They were my lower confidence picks, and so. Oh well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, next week we'll be able to talk about how not back is Texas, because I think the answer is going to be very not back, but we'll see.
Listen, and I am prepared to do whatever is necessary to eat crow. No, I won't, because Texas is always hot first half. They're gonna lose. They're gonna lose again to. I don't even know what their schedule is. They're gonna lose again to
UTSA,
some random team. Yeah, they'll lose. They'll lose to SC. Yeah, they'll lose to the Meeps.
That's the dream. That's the dream. They somehow beat Alabama.
Beat Alabama.
On Longhorn Network, too, by the way.
That would be just the greatest thing ever. I might even trade Ohio State not even making the playoff for that to happen. Like, that's how serious I am.
Beat Alabama,
like Texas
and then lose
beating
to
Alabama and lose to
UTSA.
Gosh. I just want chaos.
Please.
Yeah.
Truly, all I want is chaos.
Oof. All right, guys. God. I am out.
Sounds good. Okay. Josh, thanks for recording.
Oh, of course.
Appreciate it as always.
Happy to do it. Where did I put? Hold on. Don't thank me yet. I got to remember where I threw. There it is.
Aaron, we recording football?
I think
Up
we're
to- up to
probably
you.
good.
Okay,
Yeah.
I won't.
All right, have a good one, guys.
Sounds good. Later,
Bye,
Josh.
John.
See ya.
I think we're good.
Okay, I'm trying to see if I.
Yeah. Do you
Oh,
have
my.
some best bets at all?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Yeah. We'll give
I
three again if that
listed them
works.
I listed several of them already. I just needed to look up they hadn't released the odds
Oh
yet.
yeah, sure.
So it's also kind of just waiting on that. But I have some listed on my college football thing that I just update weekly. I just wrote down all the key games, interesting games, and then potential best bets. Obviously, that's depending on whatever line they actually give.
Yep.
But I was just looking up what the specifics of my bets last week, and took it on the chin a little bit there. So
It's okay.
I got one of them.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what was the final score?
You
of
got
the
one
Washington
because it was 25 points for that one. I looked it up.
game? Dang.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that one's not as bad as I thought then.
Yeah.
It was a big number. That's kind of why I thought it might be fine.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Aaron, also, we will probably won't talk about it, but how bad is Louisville?
It makes me
Did you see-
sad. I didn't.
Did you see the final score? I didn't watch it at all.
Yeah, I didn't
I
either.
just saw the final score and was like, what? How?
I think I want to say Sean Tucker got injured in that game too. Didn't even play the whole time.
Wow.
That's
That's pretty bad.
yeah. I feel bad because I love Malik Cunningham, but
Yeah, that was ugly. That was real ugly.
yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I'll have best bets, and I can even get the actually written part of that down while we are while we're doing stuff. So because that's not hard for me.
Yeah, it sounds good. I think we'll probably we can touch on week one a little bit, but obviously there's enough to talk about in week two that I figure we can kind of cover that mostly, since that's also what I teased in the podcast. So
Yeah, and we talked a lot. So
yeah.
I would like to talk about the backyard brawl a little bit.
Yes,
at least.
let's do that.
Just because we didn't really get a chance to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
All right. Well, we can get started if you're ready, and I'll try to end. We'll try to end by 9. That way we can catch up on Georgia Tech, or whatever else we got. So
yeah, hopefully it's close.
yeah, I know. We'll see. All right, welcome to Football Mondays. Johnny, it's good to be back with you. It's good to have so many college football games in the record books, in the standings, whatever you want to call it. Man, we had some good games. And you brought up a good point. We really should start all the way back to the beginning of this week, because Thursday we had the return of the backyard brawl between West Virginia and Pittsburgh. And I don't think it could have possibly delivered a better game. For us as neutral fans, if you're West Virginia, you're just devastated. But for everybody else, that game was fantastic. I mean, what a great thing to see that rivalry back this year and the next 4 years, I believe.
Yeah. Bring them all back. Bring back Missouri, Illinois to start the season. Bring back Texas. Yes, you laugh, but it matters. Bring them A&M and Texas back. Bring back these regional rivalries, and even not traditional rivalries, but in-state battles, places where you interact with these alumni. A guy who went to that school, and he drives you a little nuts, and you have to run into him at the grocery store, or maybe you work with them.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the fun ones. Like App State playing North Carolina, they're not rivals. They're not. Maybe they are now.
Yeah.
Old Dominion and Virginia Tech, at East Carolina and NC State, that might be a legitimate rivalry, honestly, with their history. We need more of those. Bring back the original with Pitt and West Virginia. That was record crowd. It was fantastic. It's almost like people care, even though Pitt and West Virginia have no thoughts of making the playoff this year. West Virginia knows they're not winning the Big 12. Pitt might think they could win the Big 12. I personally don't think they will, but they have reason for hope there. Gosh, they just hate each other. And there's that hatred, that respect, that wanting so desperately to have that win hanging over them. for the rest of the year. We need to bring those back and be innovative with more of those games. Like we saw the ACC, I question how smart it was, but I love that those games happened. And all three of them were fantastic and super competitive. We need more of those.
Yeah, I agree. It was amazing. And you're right about record breaking. It was not just record breaking for Pittsburgh University. It was for the entire city of Pittsburgh. There have never been so many fans watching a home Pittsburgh sporting event across the Penguins, Steelers, anybody. So hats off to those teams and for that game. I mean, just a wild pick six at the end, off the wide receiver's hands, run all the way back. West Virginia was up 7, and 57 seconds later, they're down 7, and that's how the game finished. Just a wild ending, and what really kicked off a week of wild endings. You talked about App State, North Carolina, just absolute chaos. Last night, as we're recording this on a Sunday night, between Florida State and LSU, just a wild game. And I think we should talk about that one just a little bit because if you're watching just our show, we encourage you to listen to the Fifth and Goal Sports podcast, where we did a little bit more breaking down of some of the bigger games from week 1. Your Ohio State, Notre Dame, your Georgia, Oregon, your Arkansas, Cincinnati, all those games. We kind of have a preview for there, or a recap, I should say, in our episode. So if you want to hear about those games, I'd encourage you to check that podcast out. It's kind of wherever podcasts are. But we didn't have a chance to talk about Florida State and LSU. And I've been one that has said, and I'm doubling down on this now, and it's a little easy now, but I'm not sure the Brian Kelly LSU marriage is going to work. Like, I think he's going to get them better than where they are. Like, he'll get them to 8-4, 9-3. I don't think he really ever will get them into a place where they're actually contending in the SEC for an actual SEC title for a college football playoff. And he may prove me wrong, and I know I am talking about the all-time winningest coach in college football, right? A current winningest football coach, even over Nick Saban. So I fully understand. And he's got a 500 average, roughly, against teams in the top 25, and that's fairly respectable. And that was good for Notre Dame and got them 10, 11 wins every season. And he's one of Notre Dame's best coaches. But when you're playing in the SEC West, guess how many top 25 teams you play a year? Like 6, usually. And if you're going 500, that means your best season's 9-3. Again, is that an improvement from the last 2 years for LSU? Absolutely. But the wheels kind of fell off for LSU in that Florida State game. They almost come back, and then they get the extra point blocked. It was a special teams disaster last night for the Tigers. I'm curious what your thoughts are on a team that, 2 teams desperate to get back to their usual winning ways, at least when you look at their program's history.
I'll start off with some positives. I was really impressed by Travis last night, quarterback for Florida State. He was controlled and excellent in his decision making, and he made some great plays. Florida State really impressed me with their self-control. And that's why, wasn't that the difference in the game? Mm-hmm. Florida State they looked the most controlled and confident I've seen them under Mike Norvell ever. And I don't think it's really even close. Maybe that Notre Dame game a little bit last year, but that even felt a little chaotic with the quarterback situation. Mm-hmm. They felt controlled. They really should have won this game by 14 points, roughly.
Yeah.
LSU still really felt like they're the more talented team. And it felt like Florida State, to your point, Aaron, outcoached them, had more discipline. Special teams clearly cost, 2 muffed punts, a blocked field goal, and a blocked extra point. Florida State missed a field goal, and then they went for it and didn't get it on 4th down, turnover on down. So they didn't play a completely clean game and coach perfectly, but really impressed by Florida State in that manner and getting after the quarterback. They were able to do that. I will give Brian Kelly the benefit of the doubt for now. LSU was a mess. Is still a mess. Mm-hmm. And I'm disappointed to see disciplinary issues be really the problem, because there were a number of horrible personal fouls. The targeting. Oh my gosh. That's the video they'll show the next 10 years. Yep. This is what targeting is, because it was that blatant. He headbutts him, basically, the quarterback. He headbutts Travis, and Travis, to his credit, threw the dime of a touchdown that play.
It was the best play of the game.
Fantastic throw. you love the wild and wacky. It was such a fun game. Uh, I will withhold judgment from Brian Kelly just because I think LSU was such a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
They have the talent. I think it'll be a rough season. I don't think it's fair to whack them over the head for how it goes right now. I think this is a cleanup year, and next year I expect things to be fixed. You know, you kind of went into the game thinking whoever wins this game is going to come out with unreasonable expectations for the rest of the season because it's two big brand names. Florida State, you're still probably at best 8-4. We're probably looking 7-5. LSU, you're probably not making a bowl game now. That's the reality, really, of what last night was. I don't want to, poo-poo that situation because it was a fun game. Like, let's focus on that. But that's the reality here. Like, that's the reality. Neither one of these teams is remotely close. Mike Norvell's trying to save his job. That was a big step in doing so. Big step in doing so.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I think it was such a meaningful game for Florida State, who has lost or found ways to lose those kind of games since he's been there. And really, you go even further than that. And I agree with you. I'm not trying to say Brian Kelly losing that game. It's not a see I told you so because it's his first game. It's the same reason why I'm not freaking out about Marcus Freeman going 0-2 in his first two games against Oklahoma State and Ohio State. I think Freeman's going to be excellent at Notre Dame. But just in the general long-term sense for LSU, I don't think Kelly turns them into a title contender like they were under Ed Orgeron or, even Les Miles had them and did, championship contention every now and again. Yeah. I don't personally see that with Brian Kelly, but we'll see. And I think it may start with his offense. But I wasn't surprised to see Jaden Daniels win that quarterback battle. Kelly was keeping that extremely close to the vest. Not surprised to see. You could see it. His ability to scramble and make plays happen. Now, he's gonna have to get better throwing the ball. Like there was some obvious and that's been last night against Florida State. If you had never watched Jaden Daniels play football, that was a pretty perfect encapsulation of what his career has been. Just fantastic, can make plays with his legs, but has struggled with inconsistencies throwing the ball. I hope that he can solve some of that because if he can, then LSU's got an offense that could even have some high upside with some of the wide receiver talent that they've got.
Absolutely. But we'll see. He missed basically touchdown throws with Boutte was wide open.
Yeah.
On that crossing pattern, you saw him get so angry, and he kind of dropped the ball there because I think he let his emotions get the best of him.
Yes.
But he literally is open for 5 seconds across the entire field and then comes back and is basically jumping at Jaden Daniels. I'm open. I'm right here. He probably scores a touchdown on that throw. But but it was a fun game. I love Labor Day weekend because honestly, I wish there were more of the games on Saturday spread out into Sunday and Monday. I don't know why we don't do that. It's a blast to have college football, 5 days in a row.
Yeah, it's great. As we're recording, we've got Clemson and Georgia Tech going on. So if anything crazy happens, we'll obviously touch on that next week. So it's interesting for Boutte. It sounded like a not great scenario for him after the game. Sounded like he was getting some death threats from LSU fans. So stay classy. And then deleted everything LSU related from his Instagram account. So read into that what you will, but really, I think I blame the LSU fans most of all, certainly in that scenario. That's a little ridiculous. Okay, well, I think we could probably talk about those week 1 games for this entire hour, but there's a selection of maybe not as big, but equally as interesting set of games in week 2. So I don't know. I guess kind of we could maybe just do an extended picks because we're gonna make our picks, and maybe in the process of some of those picks we can take a deeper dive into some of those games. That will be particularly interesting. So if you're not aware, we currently have a bit of a wager happening in our ESPN picks where we have an ESPN group. If you're not part of it, look it up, Fifth and Goal Sports. I'll make sure that you're able to still enter, even though we're a week in. It's not too late. And there will be a cash prize for the winner. So stay tuned to that. But what I'm worried about the most is not eating a bowl of mayonnaise ice cream. And that's on the line for the loser of Jonny and I. Jonny, we both went 6-4, so relatively respectable. Based on how we sorted our confidence picks, I do have a 40-35 lead in points, but that's pretty pretty slim for week 1. So we basically tied for all intents and purposes. So week 2.
What was your biggest miss of the weekend, Aaron?
That's a
What do you
good
feel like
question.
was your biggest miss?
Let's see.
I can start with mine.
Yeah, go
My
ahead.
biggest miss was easily picking San Diego State over Arizona.
Mine was too.
Most of the ones that I missed were like, it was tight. Like I did go with UTSA over Houston. I mean, that's a brutal way to end a game. I still hate the overtime rule with the 2-point conversion. It's a terrible way of finishing games. But clearly that game was worth my lowest confidence point, I believe it was, or 1 or 2 there at the bottom. I did go with the Beavers. That ended up being a really good pick. But my worst one was I really, after how awful Arizona was last year, I didn't see them beating San Diego State, and they beat them handily. So, I mean, well done by the Wildcats on the road, winning that game. I think that was my 8th confidence pick. So clearly, egg on my face there. That was my worst one.
Yeah, I had that pick wrong as well. I did have it at 6, so a little bit less damage. But Jaden DeLora, Washington State transfer, stepped right in Arizona. I mean, any win's a big win for them, for this program trying to rebuild. And against the San Diego State team that won double-digit wins last year, and it was at San Diego State, opening up a brand new stadium. That's a good win, and that's on my list, on my short list of games I really, really want to watch as quickly as I can. Kind of some retroactive film study, if you will. I also had Boise State winning over Oregon State. That did not happen either. Oregon State, in the wake of all of the bad things that happened to the Pac-12, Oregon State's win over Boise State was a good thing and a needed thing if they're going to have any playoff contention. It looks like at this point, the way Utah and Oregon lost, it'll be tough for them to run the table. So that kind of leaves USC, but I don't know. Let's see what Oregon State does. I don't know if they'll make really an impact, but
love the Beavers.
Yeah, I do too. And a win over Boise State gives them that opportunity. I also got Florida wrong, but I had that at a 3 confidence. I thought that was likely.
Yeah, that was
and then
low for
my
me
least
too.
confidence pick was Boston College over Rutgers. I picked Boston College, but good for Rutgers. That's a big win on the road for Rutgers, so good for them. So I got that one wrong, but I did get 7, 8, 9, 10. I got those 4 picks all
Aaron,
correct.
Rutgers also won without Verdell. Like their starting quarterback and several other key players who didn't make the trip. Like huge win, great win for no Big Ten team has lost a non-conference game yet.
Wow, there you go. Yeah, so that kind of takes us to this week where we've got some fun games to pick. So let's just start with the one that all of the usual shows are going to. You've got Game Day, you've got Big Noon Kickoff, you've got Josh Pate's show. They're all going to Austin, Texas, where the Texas Longhorns welcome in the Alabama Crimson Tide. I have to believe, Johnny, that we have a for sure 10 confidence pick with the Crimson Tide handling the Longhorns. Are you in agreement with that?
Are they they're your 10 too?
They are, yes.
10. It's also sometimes when I make my most confidence pick, I will be least upset if this upset happens.
Yeah.
So it kind of mitigates, like if Texas wins and I lose my number 10 confidence pick, oh well.
And so did everybody else in the nation for that matter.
I also don't care about my confidence pick at that point because I'll be thrilled. Yeah. So sometimes that's the method to my madness in picking that. Aaron, do you think they cover? Last time I
was going to ask you what the line is.
Alabama is a 3-touchdown favorite.
Alabama covers. I would take Alabama by 30 in this game.
Right. Like, I know it's Utah State, and Utah State barely beat UConn. So, like, it's not only is Alabama, like, playing a bad team. They're playing a real bad team. And it's Alabama. So Alabama still looked sharp, though, and focused. And that game could have been 100-0 if they really wanted it to. There's no path to victory. They're going to load the box on Robinson. Texas will not be able to run the ball. Their offensive line is their weakness. Quinn Ewers is going to be running for his life. Texas's defense might have a pulse. I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama's only got 24 at half. Which that sounds ridiculous. I would, that would be a good half. Like, honestly, if it's my guess is it's 24-7 at halftime and already done. I don't see a path to victory. I agree. I think they cover. They
I think of it
cover.
this way. Go back to last year. Alabama plays Miami to open up the season in a neutral site. Do you really think last year's Miami team is that much worse than this year's Texas team? If anything, like,
No,
they're
I
pretty
think
much
they're
the
very
same.
similar.
And what was that, like
Very
54 to
similar.
10 or something? Like, that's kind of what I'm expecting. I think a little bit better because Texas is at home at least.
Yeah,
And maybe
at
has
least it's.
maybe some better talent, but oh gosh.
And Alabama hates that it's a noon kick, and
Yeah,
people are
right.
ticked off about it. So maybe some weird things happen. I'm hoping, desperately hoping, but not. I have zero confidence. Zero.
Yeah, yeah. So thus the 10 confidence for Alabama. That makes a lot of sense. Interesting pick. Wake Forest travels to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, the Commodores, are 2-0 to start the year. Good for Vanderbilt. I am going to pick Wake Forest, but without Sam Hartman and with Vanderbilt being better, I think the Commodores are going to hang in this game for a while. I do like Wake Forest. I do like them to win, but I mean, right now I'm looking at the percentages. 83% have Wake Forest, and that might be a bit high.
It is too high. It is too high. This will be really low on my confidence pick just because I haven't gotten to see Wake play. Who are they without Sam Hartman?
Yeah.
One player doesn't make the team, but he's not only the quarterback, he's the leader. And a team that is young and doesn't know any better like Vanderbilt is dangerous. And they're home in Nashville. They could win this game. Wake Forest without Sam Hartman's not even a ranked team in my mind.
Yeah.
So I mean, don't be surprised if Wake Forest all suddenly is not ranked when the new AP poll comes out, and that's just because the poll came out before Sam Hartman's injury, or medical issue. This is going to be real low on the confidence pick. I think Vandy could definitely win. I don't want to overreact to Hawaii though, so
Yeah.
I will probably still pick Wake Forest. Wouldn't be shocked if Vandy pulls it off though. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Hawaii will be probably one of the worst FBS teams this year. They beat Elon, but Elon even scored like 30 points and was pushing Vanderbilt at the end. So we'll see, but good for the Commodores. I mean, starting 2-0, I don't care who you're playing against. That's an achievement right now for a Vanderbilt program that I think has 3 wins in the last 3 seasons. So good for them on basically doubling up their win total from some of those years. The next pick. And I don't think enough people are talking about this game because it doesn't get the attention that Alabama, Texas does. But how about Tennessee and Pittsburgh playing? This is a fantastic game. Pittsburgh's got to try to get their emotions back up after that backyard brawl. All of a sudden, bang! Here's an SEC team in Tennessee that, in my opinion, will be the second best team in the East. I believe in the SEC East, has a tremendous offense. This is fascinating. I think I'm leaning towards Tennessee because, again, I don't know how good West Virginia actually is. I know Pittsburgh did well to beat them, but West Virginia had Pittsburgh on the ropes. This is not. I think Keaton Slovis will be fine at Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's got a shot at double-digit wins at 9-3 at a Coastal. They'll be right there. But we're talking about Tennessee, a team that I think is a 9-win team in the SEC, and those are two very different things. So I'm taking the Vols. I'm expecting a close game. I'm expecting 41-37 Tennessee.
This is a matchup between teams with high expectations in their conference, and to kind of take, for Tennessee, take that next step. And for Pittsburgh, I would say in some ways take that next step as far as being a consistent team at the top of the ACC pyramid there and being there every season. I definitely have Tennessee. I know it's at Pittsburgh. Not to criticize, I know Pat Narduzzi got angry about people basically talking bad about the Pittsburgh home fan base. They won't be as into this game as they were at West Virginia, which I don't expect them to. That would be unfair, truly, for them to be as up for this game. But Pittsburgh's had some bad attendance records in the past. Hopefully that is going to change around. I don't like seeing empty stadiums. What I saw at a UCLA this last weekend was just disgusting. I would like to see more than 2,000 people in a 80,000 seat stadium. I have Tennessee. I believe in Hendon Hooker. I have more faith in him than I do in Keaton Slovis. I felt like Slovis didn't lose the game for Pittsburgh, but he didn't win it either. I felt like the wide receivers and the playmaking defense really won that game. Now, he played fine, but in a shootout, I trust Tennessee. I trust that offensive firepower. I think Tennessee's ready. I think they're ready. This has been the game circled for them. where
Yeah, good
Pittsburgh
point.
was really dead set focused on West Virginia, which is correct. I think Tennessee gets them in this one. This will actually be a medium confidence pick for me. I feel good about it.
Yeah, I will say if Pittsburgh does find a way to win, all of a sudden
Oh,
people are going to be like,
great job.
"Whoa, Pittsburgh," and that's fair.
They'll have two of the best wins.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No doubt. All right. Washington State, Wisconsin. I believe this is a bowl matchup of some Holiday Bowl, probably the last 5 Holiday Bowls that have been played. I like Wisconsin, and this will probably be my. Well, I'm not going to give away my numbers, but look, Washington
it'll be
State
high.
almost found a way to lose to Idaho this week. Which, you know what? They'll lose to an FCS team in week 1 and then rattle off 8 wins. So I don't know what to make of this Washington State team, but it does appear like it's a rebuilding year. If you look at the players they lost from last season, including their quarterback we mentioned who led Arizona to a big win. Anyways, I don't need to say too much more about this. I like Wisconsin. Braylon Allen is just tremendous, and he's 19 years old. Actually, I think he's 18 years old. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Wisconsin is going to win this.
Time of possession, ball dominant, point of attack. Washington State won't be able to hold up in the trenches. I expect Wisconsin to win comfortably. Comfortably for Wisconsin, though, could be 20 points.
Yeah.
Just with how they dominate possession, I don't have much fear that Wisconsin loses this game, truthfully.
Yeah, I agree. All right, here's another potential toss-up. Houston travels. Actually, I was going to say travels to Texas Tech. I believe this is a neutral site game in Arlington, maybe. I don't have it pulled up in front of me. Or maybe it's...
Let me see.
Yeah, Johnny, you pull that up. So Houston, last week I said my hot take was that Houston goes 12-0, and you mentioned it. They survived in triple overtime against UTSA, and now they play Texas Tech, who they lost to, I want to say 38-24 last season. And I was like, this is going to be really tough. But here's the deal. Tyler Shao, Texas Tech starting quarterback, is going to be out for the next couple weeks. So that's all it took for me to pick Houston. Again, I thought I should probably double down anyway since I had that hot take. So I'm going to pick Houston. It'll be low for me. But look, if the Cougars do win this game, then they will have every opportunity in front of them to go 12-0 because that's the biggest hurdle left on that schedule for Houston to go 12-0 because, reminder, they do not play Cincinnati. They do not play UCF in the conference schedule. So they've got every opportunity with a win. They've got to handle business against the Red Raiders.
I'd love to go to this game. It's only $13 for the cheapest ticket right now. Aaron, it is in Lubbock. So Texas Tech
it is at Texas Tech. Okay.
And clearly, I
neutral site last year, I believe. Maybe that's what it is.
I think the betting odds are punishing Houston for having such a close loss. Win against UTSA. I think that's unfair, really, for the first game of the season to be punishing them. They are 3-point underdogs. This is actually one of my best bets for the week.
Ooh.
I have Houston winning.
Okay.
Or, you mentioned Texas Tech's starting quarterback is out. I think Houston has the opportunity to regain themselves, refocus. I think they're able to finally kind of kill their demons, if you will, and beat Texas Tech and, overcome that early season loss. I think that's a huge, you can talk about the emotion that it takes to win those tight games. I could also talk about the confidence that it gives you as a team. Like, we survived. That's a really good team. That's
there's no shame in going to UTSA and winning by any margin. No shame.
That's a double-digit win team from last year. Yep. I really like Houston as the underdog. That's my underdog pick this week. I think Houston does beat Texas Tech. I wouldn't be surprised if that betting line changes throughout the week, but it counts when I pick it. So
yeah,
I have Houston. But like you said, though, Aaron, I'm not going to be super confident in it, but I feel good. Feel good about Houston winning that.
Yeah, should be awesome. That game is a 4 p.m. Eastern Time kick on Fox Sports 1. The game kicking off. Sorry, that's on Fox. The game on Fox Sports 1 is the Cyhawk battle between Iowa State and Iowa. And wow, I don't even know what to say about that Iowa win over South Dakota State. Here's the deal. This gives you a sense.
It was a beautiful
yes
way of playing the game. It's how the game should be played. Just fundamentals, field position, punting is winning.
Spencer Petras had a 1.1 QBR. That's all I need to say. That That is all I need to say. That is it. And here's the funny thing, and I think you're going to agree with me. I don't care if Iowa shows up to that game against South Dakota State, or against Iowa State. If they showed up blindfolded, they'd find a way to beat the Cyclones because they do every year. And it doesn't matter how atrocious that offense is. Last year, I think their defense scored 2 touchdowns against the Cyclones to win. They're going to find a way. It is in Iowa City. They're going to beat Iowa State. I don't know how. I don't know how ugly it'll be. Maybe they'll need 6 safeties. They're going to find a way.
Maybe it'll go to overtime.
Yeah.
And it'll be a 2-point conversion. I will say, Iowa could be in trouble because they lost their best asset in the rivalry, and that's Brock Purdy. Iowa lost their best scoring weapon, and that's Brock Purdy.
Oh, no.
You laugh because I'm right.
Yep.
That was their best weapon on offense to score points. Was Brock Purdy throwing the ball and dropping back and fumbling it.
Jeez.
So, assuming Iowa State's quarterback doesn't turn over as much, Aaron, this actually might be my lowest confidence ranked game.
I don't blame you.
Just because if there is a time to beat them, it is now.
Yeah.
Now, Iowa's defense is great. This game easily could be 9-6. I'm not exaggerating.
Oh,
I
yeah.
will watch the heck out of this game. It will be a beautiful 9-6 game.
Yeah.
I will pick the Hawkeyes because, like you said, the Cyclones just can't win.
No.
But you know what? This might be the year.
Mm-hmm.
It might be. It might be. I'm kind of cheering for the Cyclones. I know that's wrong to cheer against your conference brethren,
Hey,
but
you do whatever you want, man. There's no rules.
my hope is that somehow we get over 20 punts in the game. That's my real that's my real goal.
You're a real sicko for that. You're a real sicko, Johnny. Iowa winners of 6 in a row in that series for the Cy-Hawk Trophy. All right, a game that will likely have more offense and is an important SEC East game is Kentucky against Florida. As it is right now, number 20 Kentucky versus Florida. I do expect Florida to be ranked when the top 25 rankings come out and will likely be ranked over Kentucky, I would think. But yeah, the Wildcats come into Florida where they've had a lot of trouble in this series. But recently they did pick up an important win against the Gators. But here's the deal. There's 2 ways of looking at this in my mind. Either Florida will be so over the top excited about their win against Utah, they'll forget to show up on Saturday, or they'll be uber confident with some really big expectations in one of college football's emerging stars and Anthony Richardson. And I expect the latter. In addition, there's some weird suspension stuff going on with Kentucky, their best running back, with some DUI mess from the summer, and I don't know exactly what the status of that is or if he'll be playing. Kind of just up in the air on that. Also, it's at home for Florida, so that gives me all the reason and potentially a actually high confidence pick to pick the Gators here.
Really? High confidence.
I mean,
pick.
high meaning like 5-6. I'm not crazy, but
Still,
Yeah.
I all the reasons you're saying, totally understand Florida. Anthony Richardson, it's another night game at the Swamp, so they'll have a huge home field advantage.
Yep.
Kentucky has struggled there, even though I believe they won the last time they traveled to Gainesville. I could be wrong about
yeah,
that.
I'll check.
Anthony Richardson's the game changer here. I'm curious to see Will Levis in a first real matchup. You know, everybody's talking about his draft capability. I don't buy it, but here's a real test, real challenge. I trust Kentucky's defense, though. And that's why I think this actually could end up being a real low-scoring game. Do not be surprised if this game is similar to that Utah-Florida game where there's not many points until towards the very end, perhaps even a little lower ultimately scoring. Anthony Richardson's a difference for me here. So this is going to be real low in confidence, but I will go with the Gators. I will go with the Gators on this one.
Yeah. So 2018 was the year that the Wildcats went into Gainesville, got that win, and that snapped a 31-game Florida win streak, which was the longest in the nation at that point. So they won last year, so they have won 2 of the last 5. But I like Florida. We'll see how that pans out. Again, this could be a really important game because let's say Georgia looked so good against Oregon. If you isolate that one game, and this is the danger of week 1 overreaction, if you isolate that one game against Oregon, Georgia's not losing to anybody
Right.
But here's the deal. I think Georgia does lose a game. And if Florida
I
has a
agree.
good enough season to only have one SEC loss and they beat Georgia, they've got the head-to-head, and they're the team moving to the SEC championship. I don't think it's out of the question. When you've got a guy like AR-15, which I'm glad he kind of got rid of that nickname for, anyways. But Anthony Richardson, when you've got a guy with his talent, with that jump pass spin move that's just been circulating on Twitter, like that was just an insanity.
He vaulted himself into at least consideration for the Heisman.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because that's a moment. That's a moment. Like if he hangs around and is in it, they're going to play that play a million times. You have to have moments. You have to be big in big games. And he was, and it's not even about numbers. He was big when the moment mattered in that game. And they won, of course.
Yeah. So I'm fascinated
Also,
by this
Oregon
game.
might be terrible. So I like
exactly. Yeah.
that, like Oregon, Georgia, both things can be right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Georgia didn't look like they were missing as much on defense as we thought they might be. Oregon looked ill prepared for the moment.
Yeah.
They didn't look like they just weren't good enough. They didn't look like they were prepared for it. So Oregon might be bad this year too. So that's both could be true.
Yep. Yep. All right, we move on to the Pac-12. We've got a 7:30 p.m. kick on ABC. Their Saturday night football game between USC and Stanford. And look, this is a series that when you've thought USC has high expectations, they show up to Stanford week 2 and just get beat. And you're like, oh, never mind. This is just the same old USC. I don't think that's the case here. It's partially because Stanford's down from some of those past teams. But at this point, USC appears to be the Pac-12's only playoff hope. And I do think they're talented enough. They're not injured enough where their lack of depth isn't showing. This is a truly talented USC team with a gifted offense, and I have no issues saying the Trojans win, even though it's at Stanford on the farm.
This is actually another one of my picks. USC is only a 9-point favorite. I don't think that's nearly enough. USC covers easily. They're going to beat Stanford. The last time Stanford had a win that meant anything was beating Oregon last year, and that Oregon beat themselves in that game. Stanford hasn't been the same. I think this is more on hesitancy with USC because we haven't seen them play somebody yet. I think it's a fair bet even to go ahead and go 9 points with USC winning by 10. I expect it to be higher than that, but 10 is a cover. Great. USC easily. Stanford won't be able to keep up. My fear with USC is on the defense and depth. It's week 2. Stanford doesn't have the firepower to keep up. USC easily.
Yeah. And I think part of the line probably comes off the heels of a 42-28 Stanford victory over then number 14 USC. But again, we are talking about two completely different teams for USC.
Yeah, it's not the same.
I think. Now, again, this will be kind of the big test. Just USC, yeah. And then Stanford's got a bye week after that, a week 3. So that's kind of odd for them. But okay, yeah, we're in agreement there. Another ranked team, in the top 25. Oklahoma State welcomes in a Power 5 opponent in Arizona State. I unfortunately think that there may be a point where the wheels kind of fall off for Arizona State this season, and maybe a loss to Oklahoma State does the trick, or at least gets the ball rolling in that direction. I'd love to be wrong because Herm Edwards, I don't have any ill will against him. That's just the way I feel. But I do like Oklahoma State to handle their business here at home.
Yeah. Oklahoma State for 3 quarters looked great. And then they let Central Michigan just kind of – they have problems with Central Michigan. I don't know why they keep scheduling the Chippewas.
I have no idea why they scheduled them. Yeah, you're right.
Do that.
Yeah.
It looks like an old Oklahoma State team, though, where they can score at will, and the defense is a big problem.
I mean – and looking at how that Ohio State game went, was Jim Knowles, and I think he was. He was that big of a deal.
Again, overreact to 1 week, but
yes,
that's what it appears. And so I like Oklahoma State, though, all said and done. I like them very easily in this game. Arizona State's going to score some points, though. They're going to score some points, but if I had any fears about Oklahoma State, I think how tight that game got last week in week 1 will wake them up. They'll be ready to go. It's another Power 5 opponent. They got this. Oklahoma State will win.
It'll be prime time for them too. Should have a pretty good fan influence there in Stillwater. All right. Speaking of fan influence, number 10, again, these are top 25 rankings as of last week. We'll get updated ones. Number 10, Baylor goes to number 25, BYU, in a very tough place to play at night, after dark, 10:15. I'm looking at the percentages now on ESPN. 17% of people are picking BYU, and I am one of those 17% because I like BYU at home. It will probably be number one because I'm picking an upset, but
Yeah.
BYU is going to be good again. I think people somehow forget that they went like 5-0, 6-0 against the Pac-12 this year, and a lot of talent is returning. I know they lost some key pieces, but BYU is not going to run the table like they did last year in some of those games because their schedule is absolutely brutal. But BYU is a really good team. It is an incredibly difficult place to play, and I think Baylor's going to find that out. And if Baylor's not ready, and I know I trust Dave Aranda, but I just think BYU is going to get the job done somehow.
This game starts at 10:15 out in Provo, and they're going to keep me up, and I'm maybe I'll head to Roosters or something to keep myself up. Roosters sponsor us. But this game is my most I don't know. I do not know. Aaron, to your point, despite what people are voting, BYU is a 3.5-point favorite in Vegas. A big part of that is, and I dug deep into Baylor this year. They lost. I know they have their quarterback coming back. They lost a ton of production. Their best running backs, best wide receivers, their two leading tacklers, all gone. I will go with Baylor, but I really struggle with this one. I really struggle with it. I will absolutely stay up for this. And it won't be, I don't believe it's a pick'em. Just one game that I want to mention that will be kicking off about the same time with that Oregon State win over Boise State. Oregon State, Fresno State, right at that time. Thrilled to watch that. Heck, Oregon State could be the Mountain West champions after 2 weeks with the win. So that'll be. We're closing out with some great games Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, well, and you joke about the Mountain West Championship, but I think Boise State, even though they looked kind of bad against Oregon State, maybe surprisingly bad, or maybe give credit to Oregon State for looking that good. Boise State's the favorite in the Mountain. Fresno State's the favorite in the West divisions. So yeah, I think you're right about that. Another game we're going to be following is we're excited to announce that we've kind of always half jokingly, half serious been telling folks that we'd like to take the show on the road. We are taking the show on the road. We're going to call it our college football tour. It might be a tour with one stop this season. We don't know for sure, but we are headed to Oxford, Ohio, where Miami's going to be taking on Robert Morris. So we're going to be covering that game. So check out our website, fifthandgoalsports.com. We'll have a couple articles, probably some videos from our time there. We're excited to check them out as they take on the Colonels or are they the Colonials? I got to figure that out before the game. But Robert Morris, either way. No, they're the Colonials. That's right. They're the Colonials. Anyways, excited to see Miami in person. They hung in against Kentucky in the first half, and then Kentucky kind of pulled away. But I do think Miami has a very good chance to win the MAC East division, and then obviously, who knows with the MAC championship game. I know Kent State is down a little bit. That was a team that played virtually no defense and lost significant offensive pieces. So I do like the Red Hawks. We'll be covering them more in detail. So we're excited to bring you some content from the road next Saturday. But we do need to get back for some of those Pac-12 and late night kicks. So that's where we'll be. So if you're around, then come say hi. I don't know where we'll be. We'll be somewhere. So somewhere in Oxford. So anyways, wanted to mention that. All right. Jonny, best bets. You went 1-2 last week, so I know you wanted to do a little bit better. Kent State, speaking of, could not cover. They ended up losing by 25 when the line was 21. I'm trying to think what else I've got to actually write down here. Let's see.
I bought into Oregon covering, and that was a brutal loss. That was just awful.
Yeah,
that was just. Yeah, let's just pretend that one never happened.
But you did nail BYU 12-point favorite. They passed that easily, 31-point victory over South Florida.
Giving me the problem with them and Baylor this week.
Yeah, exactly.
But I already mentioned I like Houston. They're a 3-point dog against Texas Tech on the road. I think they win straight out. I mean, 3-point dog, you win. There's hardly any room there. But I think they cover and win right out. USC is going to cover. They're 9-point favorites at Stanford. I think they win that game by more than 9. But my 3 other ones, Miami. This is something that you normally never do when you're betting big numbers. Miami is a 26.5-point favorite over Southern Miss. Southern Miss is real bad from last year. Now, they've improved a little
They
bit.
have a
as
quarterback on the
a,
roster. That's a
as a
helpful
lit,
start.
yeah, it's hard to not
Yeah.
improve from that. And I know it was Betham Cookman. I think Miami has it this year. I think they cover 26.5. I think they really do. That's a big number. I think they do it. Mario Cristobal, I think, has the right culture. Another team that I think is not necessarily on the rise. Air Force has been steady. Colorado's real bad, though. Air Force, 17-point favorite. They cover.
Wow.
Another big number.
Okay.
They cover. Colorado's real bad. They definitely cover that game. TCU just ran all over Colorado in that second half. So, and service academies are rough, man.
Air Force
They're
was the
rough to
leading
prepare.
rushing team in the nation last year.
It's rough to prepare for those service academies. Week 1 is at least helpful. You saw like Delaware was able to beat Navy. Army lost in a good game. Who'd Army lose to?
Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, that was another fun group of 5 matchup. It's helpful when it's week 1 because you have the whole offseason to prepare. And I'm sure they prepared a little bit. I don't think they'll be ready for Air Force. I think the in-state matchup's won by Air Force. And then lastly, Memphis covers Navy. This is a dangerous overreaction here to Navy losing to Delaware. I fear for Navy. They've been on the downtrend the last few years. This is not a week 1 overreaction. It's more the last 3 years. Navy has really been on the downward slope. I think Memphis covers the 6.5 points there as well. So I'm picking a lot of favorites this week, several big numbers, but in college football, it's a little different. Some of those big numbers, you have to swallow them a little bit. I feel good about these 5 picks.
Yeah. Unlike last week, I didn't really comment last week, but I was like, yeah, I don't know, Johnny. But this week, I'm in agreement with you. I think on all 5. So we've got 5 official best bets. So that'll be hopefully a good chance to improve that record. And if you're betting, we encourage monopoly money first. But you do you, and maybe we'll make you $1 richer with some of those picks. So I like those a lot. With our remaining time, is there any other games that you've kind of got your eye on at all next week?
Always.
Always. Let's
again. We mentioned the nightcap with BYU, Baylor, Oregon State, Fresno State, Mississippi State, Arizona. Now all of a sudden, that's got some interest to it. So the fun nightcap. Other games we didn't mention, I'll focus on those. Old Dominion at East Carolina. They just had those ACC matchups. It's fun. I think East Carolina is definitely better than Old Dominion. It's just how these teams react to those games. East Carolina is heartbreaking. Old Dominion's thrilled on top of the world. East Carolina is much better than Old Dominion. But how you react to that game will be a big determining factor. I'll definitely check that out. Same type of thing. Kansas at West Virginia. Has West Virginia recovered from a brutal loss? And I think this Kansas team is vastly improved, much like Arizona, much like Vanderbilt. That might not be saying a lot. That might only be 1 or 2 more wins this season. It's a winnable game for that Kansas team. Jalen Daniels is a baller. He is able to create plays out of nothing. That's the only chance a team like Kansas has to win any of these games. Kansas is a real shot to win that. So pay attention there. If West Virginia does not react properly, Kansas will win. And then the last one, last 2, UTSA at Army, both of them brutally close in their losses in good group of 5. Another reaction game. You see a theme here. I picked a lot of reaction games because it's critical you react quickly and recover quickly after week 1. All of these teams still have the opportunity to have a really good season. It's not done yet. College football playoffs not even done for a lot of these teams. Obviously not talking group of 5. But the season, you still have an outstanding year. Yeah. It's not even close to over. Most of them are non-conference losses. Lastly, Appalachian State at Texas A&M. I'm not picking an upset by any means. and I think it's another tough recovery game. The way that game went should have grabbed Texas A&M's attention 100%. And Texas A&M has not only a pulse on defense, they have an outstanding defensive line. So they're going to hold App State's offense more in check than North Carolina did. Hard not to. But Texas A&M's offense is still really finding itself. It's in College Station. They'll win. But I think it'll be interesting for 3 quarters.
And are they looking ahead to Miami? That's the question.
I'm really curious to watch this game to get Texas A&M, how Haynes King looks against a team with a pulse. And so this they had a weather delay, their opening game. It's hard to take a lot from that. Then that really throws you off when you start the game, and then you have to pause for hours on end. It's kind of hard to see much in that tape. Still struggling with accuracy issues. Let's see how they go against a real game Appalachian State team. They won't be afraid coming into College Station. So I'm really, really interested in that game. Probably more than I should be.
Yeah, sure. I'll throw a couple as well. One is an 8 p.m. start, Boston College at Virginia Tech. A couple of really disappointing losses for both of those teams. And so what is the trajectory of your season going to look like? Because one of those teams is going to be 0-2. And that will be a tough pill to swallow when, if you looked in the preseason, and this is why we play the games on the field instead of in the magazines, but you would have thought 2-0 would be a good start and a good trajectory towards the rest of the year. 0-2 is a tough reality to face for one of these teams. If it's Virginia Tech, you're like, okay, new coach, I get it. If it's Boston College with Jeff Hafley, as much as I love him as a former Ohio State guy, that's tough. That's really tough. The other one is South Carolina at Arkansas at noon. South Carolina did just amazing things last year. To get to a bowl game and to win a bowl with some of the wins they had was truly remarkable. One of the best head coaching jobs done. I don't think they're going to be quite as good simply because I think they overachieved a little bit last year. But this is a great chance. If you go to Arkansas, who knocked off Cincinnati and held them off, if you go to Razorback Stadium and get a win, all of a sudden, I am absolutely putting South Carolina with the Florida, Tennessees, and Kentuckys of the world. Because in my mind, there's a bit of a drop-off between Kentucky, who's my 4th place team in the East, and South Carolina, who's my 5th. We've got kind of a member of a guy, Logan Stringfield, has been on this show before. Big, huge South Carolina fan, was in attendance for the game against Georgia State in week 1. He was not happy with us because we had South Carolina 5th in the East, and he said, this is all wrong. You're going to see. And this is a great test to see where South Carolina is. Even a close loss, like, I know South Carolina is not interested in a close loss, but from our outside perspective, a close loss to me at Arkansas means, all right, you're hanging around. You're going to be a pain in whoever's side you're playing with a chance to win. And look, Spencer Rattler, one of the biggest transfers of this entire offseason, will have a chance, his first real test against an SEC opponent. What does that look like?
Yeah,
I'm fascinated to know.
It'll be a man-up game, too. Because if you saw that Cincinnati-Arkansas game, I mean, it was in the trenches, smash mouth, where both teams struggling to throw the ball significantly at times. Just, I'm running, stop me. And that was the fun style that was going on there. Can South Carolina, year 2, Shane Beamer, it's a lot to ask to be able to hold up on that defensive line and that offensive line against a really good Razorback team. So, but with Arkansas having such a brutal schedule, this is easily an overlook game. Mm-hmm. So South Carolina, like you said, Aaron, just let's see whether you have it yet or not. My leaning is no, but Logan will certainly let us know if we're wrong.
Yeah. And look, I think it's fascinating if we are, and I'm okay being wrong here. KJ Jefferson, in my mind, will be, as always, as he usually is, kind of the make or break player in that game. Obviously, quarterback. So we'll see. He was banged up against Cincinnati a little bit. Hopefully, there's nothing lingering for him. And quite frankly, a game that Cincinnati should have maybe even, I'm not going to say won, but they shot themselves in the foot multiple times and still only lost by 7. So I think it speaks a lot to Cincinnati and how good they are still going to be, even with the dramatic losses they had to the NFL. It's still a very good team. Honorable mention, Duke travels to Northwestern in the battle of really good academic schools. But this is the time to tell your kids about undefeated Northwestern in the month of September. They had a bye week last week after their win against Nebraska. They play Duke, they play Southern Illinois, they play Miami. I think they win all 3 of those games. They will be 4-0 heading to Happy Valley to play Penn State. So get ready for that game.
Game day, probably.
October
Game of the
1st.
week.
That's right. Penn State, Northwestern, both teams potentially undefeated. How about that? So anyways. All right. I don't know if I have anything more to add other than the fact that we gave you hot takes last week. So just a recap of our hot takes. NC State wins the ACC. My goodness, not that game was going to have an impact on how they did in conference, but my goodness, as far as a playoff, which, Johnny, you have them in your college football playoff. Thank goodness for college kickers if you're a Wolfpack fan. My goodness, I don't know what to say about that. Brian Harsin gets fired mid-season. That was one of my kind of doom and gloom games there. They haven't played anybody, so TBD. TBD. Number 3, the Sun Belt East is the best group of 5 division. And yes, I would say a resounding yes. I know App State lost, but Old Dominion, who I think I've got them 5th ranked in my Sun Belt East.
They were supposed to finish last.
Yeah, and James Madison with a walloping victory over Middle Tennessee to get their first FBS win.
Coastal won against Army.
Yep. So yeah, I think we're correct about that. So that's pretty insane. Houston goes 12-0. They survive in triple overtime over UTSA and a great test at Texas Tech this week. So we'll see. Come on, Cougars, you can do this. We'll see. And then Texas A&M won't be ranked at the end of the season. Again, that's TBD, but we talked about it. App State, that's a tough challenge. Better make sure you're awake for that game. And then that game against Miami, week 3. I think that's it. That's pretty much our coverage of week 2. We'll see again. We'll be hanging out in Miami for that Miami, Ohio Robert Morris game, but obviously we'll be following all the scores. We're planning on watching, or at least I am watching, obviously, Alabama, Texas, all the other noon games before we got to hit the road, but should be another good week of college football. I know there's not maybe as many top 25 matchups, but again, I will say what I said in the beginning, that there will be equally as many interesting, if not wild and chaotic games like we saw in week 1. I mean, just unbelievable way to start off this college football season. And it's only getting better. The NFL kicks off this week. I know we mostly talk about college football on this particular show. We're not exclusive to college football. So we'll also be talking some NFL perhaps a little bit next week as well. So Johnny, thanks for running it back. Episode 3, week 2. Good to be here. All right. We'll see you guys next week.